The Whispering Alley. In the heart of a bustling city, there lay an alley unlike any other, shrouded in mystery and whispers. This was Whispering Alley, a narrow, fog-filled path that wound between ancient buildings like a forgotten secret. It was here that Mia, an intrepid young journalist, found herself one chilly evening, her curiosity piqued by tales of eerie whispers that echoed through the alley after dark. Mia wasn't alone in her quest for the truth. Accompanying her was Ethan, a local historian whose knowledge of the city's hidden tales was unmatched. Together, they stepped into the misty embrace of the alley, the city's clamor fading behind them like a distant memory. As they ventured deeper, the fog seemed to thicken, swallowing the dim glow of the streetlights. The whispers started softly, a mere rustling like leaves in a gentle breeze. But soon they grew clearer, forming hushed, unintelligible words that danced around them. Mia felt a shiver run down her spine, not just from the sudden drop in temperature, but from a growing sense of dread. The whispers, Ethan murmured. They say they're the voices of the past, trapped in these walls. His voice was a mix of fascination and unease, echoing Mia's own feelings. They pressed on, the whispers growing more insistent, as if urging them forward. Their journey led them to an old, bricked-up doorway, half hidden in the shadows. Here, the whispers seemed to converge, swirling around them in an almost palpable frenzy. Ethan traced his fingers over the weathered bricks, his expression turning solemn. Legend has it, he began in a low tone, that many years ago, something terrible happened here. A tragedy that left its imprint on the alley. Mia's heart raced as she listened, her reporter's instincts kicking in. She took out her recorder, the red light blinking in the dimness, capturing the haunting echoes of the alley. "What kind of tragedy?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated, then said, "There was a fire. A big one. It swept through this part of the city, claiming many lives. But it was here, in this alley, where the most lives were lost. They say the victims' final cries merged with the flames, becoming part of the alley itself." The story sent a chill through Mia. She could almost hear the crackling of flames amidst the whispers, the desperate cries of those long gone. It was a chilling thought, but as a journalist, she knew she had to delve deeper. They continued their exploration, the whispers now tinged with a sorrowful tone. As they rounded a bend, Mia stopped abruptly, her eyes widening. There, in the distance, was a shadowy figure, standing perfectly still. It was barely visible through the fog, but its presence was unmistakable. Ethan saw it too. He reached out, as if to hold her back, but Mia was already moving forward, drawn by a mix of fear and determination. As they approached, the figure seemed to waver like a mirage, and then vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Heart pounding, Mia reached the spot where the figure had stood. But there was nothing there, just the cold, damp bricks of the alley wall. "It's said that those who perished here sometimes appear," Ethan said softly behind her. "Ghosts of the past, reminders of the tragedy that occurred." The air around them felt heavy, laden with the weight of unspoken stories and forgotten lives. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone, that the eyes of the past were watching them, whispering their tales into the night. Their investigation continued, each step revealing more about the alley's sorrowful history. But as the night wore on, Mia began to feel a growing unease. The line between the present and the past seemed to blur, the whispers growing more fervent, as if resisting their intrusion. It was then that Mia made a decision. She turned to Ethan, her resolve clear. "We need to tell this story," she said firmly. "The world needs to know about Whispering Alley, about the voices that still linger here." Ethan nodded, a look of admiration in his eyes. Together, they retraced their steps, leaving the alley and its whispers behind. But even as they emerged into the city's lights, the echoes of the past followed them, a haunting reminder of the thin line between myth and reality. As Mia later sat at her desk, weaving the night's events into her article, she couldn't help but glance out the window at the city's skyline. Somewhere out there, in the heart of the city, Whispering Alley lay hidden, its secrets now part of her own story. A story of tragedy, of voices lost in time, and of a journalist and a historian who dared to listen. The Phantom of 7th Street. 7th Street was a place most people in the city avoided after dark. The once busy thoroughfare was now a deserted stretch of road, known more for its chilling tales than its faded shop fronts. It was here, under the flickering streetlights, that the story of the Phantom of 7th Street began to unfold. Detective Alex, a man of logic and reason, had always scoffed at the urban legends surrounding the street. Ghosts and phantoms were nothing more than stories to him, until he was assigned to investigate the mysterious sightings that had recently intensified. His partner in this unusual case was Sarah, a young investigator with a firm belief in the supernatural. She had requested to join the investigation, driven by a personal quest to prove that there was more to the world than what meets the eye. Their investigation began on a cold, moonless night as they walked down the desolate street. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant hum of the city. The streetlights flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows on the buildings. Alex, ever the skeptic, kept his eyes peeled for any logical explanation, a trick of the light, a reflection, or perhaps a prankster looking to capitalize on the street's infamy. Sarah, on the other hand, held her breath, half expecting to encounter the phantom at any moment. As they neared the end of the street, Sarah's hand flew to her mouth in shock. There, under a flickering streetlight, was a spectral figure, its form barely discernible. Alex saw it too, and for a moment, his skepticism wavered. The figure seemed to be beckoning them, and against Alex's better judgment, they followed. It led them to an old, abandoned building, its windows broken and its walls covered in graffiti. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Sarah's eyes were drawn to an old photograph on the ground. It was tattered and faded, but it depicted the street in happier times, bustling with life. In the background, there was a figure identical to the phantom they had just seen. "The Phantom of 7th Street," Sarah whispered, a mix of awe and fear in her voice. "It's real." Alex examined the photograph, his mind racing to find a logical explanation. It could be a coincidence, he argued, but even as he spoke, he knew his words lacked conviction. Their exploration of the building revealed more than just a photograph. Hidden beneath layers of dust and debris, they found old newspaper clippings detailing a tragic event that had occurred on 7th Street many years ago. A fire had ravaged the street, claiming several lives. Among the victims was a figure who bore a striking resemblance to the phantom. The revelation sent chills down their spines. Sarah's belief seemed to be validated, while Alex struggled to reconcile the evidence with his skepticism. The atmosphere grew tense as the weight of history pressed down on them. As they continued their investigation, strange occurrences began to happen. Objects moved on their own, cold drafts appeared out of nowhere, and the faint sound of sobbing echoed through the empty streets. One night, as they were about to leave, a sudden chill filled the air and the streetlights flickered violently. The phantom appeared again. This time its presence more pronounced, its form clearer. It seemed to be in pain, its ghostly hands reaching out to them. Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling. "What do you want from us?" she asked. The phantom pointed to the building they had explored, and then vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Driven by a sense of urgency, Alex and Sarah returned to the building. They scoured every inch, looking for anything they might have missed. It was then that they discovered a hidden room, sealed off for decades. Inside, they found personal belongings of the victims of the fire, including diaries and letters. It was as if the room was a capsule of the past, holding the memories and the pain of those who had perished. Reading through the diaries, they learned of the hardships and dreams of those who had lived on 7th Street. The phantom, it seemed, was a manifestation of their unfulfilled lives and their longing to be remembered. Sarah looked at Alex, tears in her eyes. "They just want to be acknowledged, for their stories to be told," she said softly. Alex nodded, his skepticism replaced by a newfound understanding. They took it upon themselves to share the stories of the victims, to bring awareness to the tragedy that had befallen 7th Street. In the weeks that followed, the phantom sightings ceased. The street remained deserted, but the oppressive air of sorrow had lifted. The phantom of 7th Street had found peace, thanks to 2 investigators who were willing to listen to the whispers of the past. As they walked down 7th Street for the last time, Alex turned to Sarah. "I may never fully understand the supernatural," he said, "but I've learned that there are mysteries in this world beyond our comprehension." Sarah smiled, her belief in the unseen stronger than ever. Together, they had bridged the gap between skepticism and belief, uncovering a truth that was as tragic as it was enlightening. The Phantom of 7th Street was more than just an urban legend. It was a reminder of the lives that once filled the street, and the enduring power of memory and history. And for Alex and Sarah, it was a journey that would stay with them forever, a haunting tale of a street that whispered secrets from the beyond. The cursed subway in the heart of the bustling city lay a mystery that few dared to explore. An old subway line, long abandoned and rumored to be cursed. It was this very mystery that drew Leo, an adventurous urban explorer, and Jenna, a cautious college student, to the forgotten depths of the city's underground. The subway had been closed for decades, its stations like ghost towns, and its tracks overgrown with the passage of time. Leo, with his insatiable curiosity, had heard the tales of the cursed subway, stories of ghostly passengers and trains that ran on their own. Jenna, though apprehensive, couldn't resist the lure of the unknown and joined Leo on his daring expedition. As they descended the graffiti-covered stairs into the subway, a sense of claustrophobia set in. The air was stale, and the only light came from their flashlights, casting long shadows on the walls. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant drip of water and their own footsteps. Their first discovery was an abandoned station, its platform covered in a thick layer of dust. The old advertisements on the walls were faded and peeling, frozen in time. As they explored, Jenna felt a growing unease. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The deeper they ventured, the stranger things became. Lights flickered in the distance, even though the power had been cut off years ago. The sound of a train echoed through the tunnels, sending shivers down their spines. But when they looked, there was nothing but darkness. It was when they found the derailed train that the true nature of the curse revealed itself. The train car was old, its paint chipped and its windows broken. Inside, the seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, but there was something unsettling about the scene. It was as if the passengers had just vanished into thin air. Leo, ever the thrill-seeker, wanted to press on, but Jenna couldn't ignore the sense of dread that had settled in her heart. She pleaded with Leo to leave, but he was determined to uncover the secrets of the cursed subway. Their journey took a terrifying turn when they encountered the ghostly passengers. Transparent figures appeared on the platform, their faces expressionless and their eyes hollow. They moved silently, passing through the walls and disappearing into the darkness. Leo and Jenna were frozen in fear, their rational minds struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. It was then that the true horror of the subway revealed itself. The ghostly figures began to converge on them, their whispers echoing in the tunnels. In a panic, they ran, the sound of their footsteps and ragged breaths filling the air. The subway seemed to come alive around them, the walls closing in, and the echoes growing louder. Every turn they took led them deeper into the maze of tunnels, the ghostly figures always just a step behind. Just when they thought they were hopelessly lost, Jenna spotted a light in the distance. With the last of their strength, they raced towards it, emerging into the night air, gasping for breath. They collapsed on the pavement, the city's noises a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the subway. As they looked back at the entrance, it seemed innocuous, just another part of the cityscape. But they knew the truth of what lay beneath. The experience changed them both. Leo, once a fearless explorer, was now more cautious, his curiosity tempered by the knowledge of the unknown dangers that lurked in forgotten places. Jenna, though still wary of the unexplained, had found a new strength in facing her fears. The cursed subway remained a mystery, its secrets hidden in the shadows. But for Leo and Jenna, it was a chilling reminder of the consequences of curiosity and the reality of the supernatural world that existed just beneath the surface of the everyday. The shadow on the bridge. The city had many landmarks, but none as infamous as the old bridge stretching across the river. It was an architectural relic, its steel beams rusting and its paint peeling, creating a picture of neglect. But it wasn't just the bridge's appearance that made the locals wary. It was the unexplained shadows and accidents that occurred on or near it. Rachel, an ambitious reporter with a keen interest in the city's mysteries, was drawn to the bridge's eerie reputation. She teamed up with Tom, a seasoned bridge engineer, to delve into the history and uncover the truth behind the sinister tales. Their investigation began with daytime visits to the bridge. Tom examined the structure, looking for any logical explanations for the accidents, while Rachel scoured through old newspaper archives. She discovered a pattern of unexplained incidents dating back decades, each marked by sightings of a dark, malevolent shadow. Armed with this knowledge, they decided to conduct a nighttime surveillance. As darkness fell, the bridge transformed. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the river below flowed silently like a black mirror. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Rachel set up her camera, her hands trembling slightly with a mix of excitement and fear. Tom, more pragmatic, kept a watchful eye on the structural integrity of the bridge. But as the night progressed, even he couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. It was just past midnight when they first saw it, a flicker of a dark figure moving along the bridge. It was there one moment and gone the next, like a whisper of smoke. Rachel's camera captured it, a blur of darkness against the night. They followed the shadow, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. As they moved, they heard the sound of metal creaking and the faint echo of footsteps that were not their own. Rachel's heart raced, her mind a whirlwind of fear and curiosity. Tom, usually stoic, clutched his flashlight tighter, his skepticism faltering. It was then that they found the journal, hidden beneath the loose planks of the walkway. It was old and weathered, its pages filled with the ramblings of a bridge worker from many years ago. He wrote of the shadow, describing it as a malevolent presence that haunted the bridge, causing malfunctions and accidents. He believed it was the spirit of a worker who had died during the bridge's construction. His death never properly mourned or resolved. The discovery sent chills down their spines. They now had evidence that the shadow was more than just an urban legend. It was a restless spirit, bound to the bridge by tragedy and unfulfilled justice. Determined to uncover more, Rachel and Tom continued their investigation, venturing further onto the bridge. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. In the pitch black, they felt it, a presence looming over them, its energy malevolent and angry. The bridge groaned under its weight, and the river below churned violently. Rachel and Tom were frozen in terror, realizing that they were not alone. The shadow emerged from the darkness, its form more defined now, a figure of a man, his features twisted in anger and pain. He moved towards them, and the bridge shuddered, as if responding to his rage. Rachel, her instincts as a reporter kicking in, began to speak, her voice trembling. "We know about you, about what happened. We want to tell your story, to give you peace." The shadow paused, its form flickering. For a moment, there was a sense of sadness, a glimpse into the soul of the restless spirit. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished, leaving behind a deafening silence. Rachel and Tom, their hearts pounding, made their way off the bridge. The lights flickered back on, casting the bridge in an eerie glow. They looked at each other, their faces pale, knowing they had come face to face with something beyond their understanding. In the days that followed, Rachel wrote her story, detailing the history of the bridge and the spirit that haunted it. It was published on the front page, capturing the city's attention. The story sparked a movement to honor the forgotten worker, bringing to light the injustice of his death. Tom, who had once viewed the bridge as just a structure, now saw it as a monument to the untold stories of those who had built it. He became an advocate for its preservation, ensuring that the memory of the worker and his fellow laborers was kept alive. The shadow on the bridge was never seen again after that night. Some say it was because the spirit had finally found peace, its story told and its presence acknowledged. Others believe it still lingers, watching over the bridge and its visitors. For Rachel and Tom, the bridge became a symbol of their journey into the unknown, a reminder of the power of unresolved spirits and the importance of unveiling hidden truths. The shadow on the bridge was no longer just a tale to scare children. It was a testament to the history that lay beneath the surface of the city, waiting to be uncovered. The haunting of High Tower stood like a sentinel over the city, its glass and steel facade reflecting the bustling streets below. To most, it was just another skyscraper, a testament to modern architecture. But to those who listened closely, it whispered stories of the past, stories that spoke of hauntings and unexplained phenomena. Nora, a fearless paranormal investigator, had always been drawn to places with a mysterious past, and High Tower was no exception. She had heard the tales, the disembodied voices echoing in empty corridors, the old elevator moving on its own, and the cold spots that appeared out of nowhere. Joining her in this eerie adventure was Max, a seasoned security guard at High Tower. Max had seen things that defied explanation and had his own reasons for wanting to uncover the truth. He knew every nook and cranny of the building and had access to places others didn't even know existed. As they began their investigation one stormy night, the skyscraper seemed to loom even larger, its many windows like watching eyes. The wind howled around its spire, and the rain tapped against the glass in a steady rhythm, as if setting the stage for the night's eerie events. Their first stop was the old elevator. It was said to operate on its own, stopping at floors where no one waited and opening its doors to empty halls. As they stepped inside, the lights flickered, and the elevator jolted to life, taking them not to the floor they had selected, but to one long abandoned. The hallway was shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from their flashlights. The air was cold, and their breaths materialized in front of them. As they walked, they heard the faint sound of a woman's voice, singing a melancholy tune that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Max, normally unflappable, felt a chill run down his spine. This floor was closed off years ago, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the woman's song. Nora, her curiosity piqued, began to set up her equipment, hoping to communicate with the spirit. She had brought a spirit box, a device that could pick up electronic voice phenomena. As she turned it on, the singing stopped, replaced by static that filled the air with an electric charge. They proceeded to the heart of the skyscraper, the hidden attic room. Rumor had it that the room was used for secret meetings in the past and that it held the key to the building's hauntings. The door was locked, but Max had the key, a relic from a time when the room was still in use. The attic was like a time capsule, filled with old furniture and documents that told the story of Hightower's origins. As they sifted through the papers, Nora stumbled upon a photograph of a woman, the same woman they had heard singing. Her face was stern, her eyes seeming to follow them around the room. It was then that the temperature dropped, and the air grew heavy with the scent of old perfume. The spirit box crackled to life, and a voice came through, clear and strong. "Leave," it said, the word echoing around the attic. Nora, undeterred, began to conduct a seance, calling out to the spirit. "We mean you no harm," she said, her voice steady. "We just want to understand your story." The response was immediate and terrifying. A gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing their candles and plunging them into darkness. The spirit box emitted a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once, and the photograph of the woman fell to the floor, its glass shattering. Max, his skepticism fading, grabbed Nora's hand. "We need to leave now," he urged, pulling her towards the door. But as they tried to leave, the door wouldn't budge, as if held by an unseen force. The voices grew louder, their messages overlapping and incomprehensible. The air was thick with the presence of the spirit, angry and vengeful. In a moment of desperation, Nora shouted into the darkness, "We release you from this place. Find peace." The voices stopped as suddenly as they had started, and the door swung open, the force that held it shut gone. They stumbled out into the hallway, the storm outside seeming mild compared to the turmoil they had just experienced. As they made their way out of the skyscraper, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the city. Hightower stood silent, its secrets locked away once again. In the days that followed, the hauntings ceased. The old elevator stayed put, the cold spots disappeared, and the sound of singing was no more. Nora and Max had confronted the spirit, giving it the acknowledgement it craved, and in doing so, had set it free. The haunting of Hightower became a story Nora would tell for years to come, a testament to the lingering presence of the past and the clash between modernity and superstition. For Max, it was a reminder that some things couldn't be explained by logic and reason, that sometimes you had to believe in the unbelievable. But for both of them, Hightower would always be more than just a skyscraper. It was a place where the veil between the living and the dead had been lifted, if only for a night, and where they had come face to face with the unknown. The Vanishing at Victory Park. Victory Park, a sprawling expanse of green in the heart of the city, was known for its majestic trees, serene ponds, and picturesque pathways. But beneath its peaceful facade lurked a mystery that had baffled the city for years, a series of unexplained disappearances that occurred within its boundaries. Detective Emily, known for her sharp wit and unwavering determination, was assigned to the case. She had studied every file, every report, but the clues were as elusive as the park's secrets. That's when Kyle, a local who frequented the park, approached her with information that would turn the investigation on its head. Kyle had always found solace in the park's quiet corners, but recently he had noticed strange occurrences, shadows that moved unnaturally, whispers that seemed to come from the statues, and an eerie feeling that someone, or something, was watching him. Together, Emily and Kyle delved deeper into the park's mysteries. They spent days combing through every inch of the park, from the sunlit open spaces to the more secluded areas, shrouded in the dense foliage. It was during one of these searches that they stumbled upon a hidden underground passage, obscured by overgrown vines. The passage was narrow and dark, the air musty and cold. They ventured inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing walls that hadn't seen the light of day in years. The further they went, the more intense the feeling of unease grew. It was Kyle who found the diary, hidden in a crevice in the passage wall. It was old and weathered, its pages filled with cryptic writings and sketches of the park. The entries were dated back to decades ago, and as Emily read them, a chilling story began to unfold. The diary belonged to a man who had been obsessed with the park, believing it to be a gateway to another world. He wrote of rituals and ceremonies, of attempting to open a portal that would bridge the realms of the living and the dead. His final entry was the most disturbing, a confession of a betrayal, a sacrifice that would ensure the portal's opening. Emily's heart raced as she put the pieces together. The disappearances weren't random. They were targeted, each victim chosen as a part of this man's twisted plan. The realization hit her like a wave. They were dealing with something far beyond the scope of a regular investigation. They needed to act fast. Emily called for backup, her voice urgent as she relayed the information. But as they waited, a dense fog began to roll in, enveloping the park in a ghostly shroud. That's when they heard it, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, and the air grew colder. Kyle looked at Emily, his eyes wide with fear. "It's happening," he whispered. Without warning, the statues in the park came to life, their stone faces twisting into grotesque expression. Shadows danced around them, and the air was filled with the sound of whispers, growing louder with each passing moment. Emily and Kyle ran, their hearts pounding in their chests as they raced through the park. The path seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles. It was as if the park itself was alive, its paths changing to keep them trapped. They finally emerged from the park, gasping for breath. The city's lights seemed harsh after the darkness of the park, and the sounds of the city were a stark contrast to the eerie silence they had left behind. The backup arrived, but when they entered the park, it was as if nothing had happened. The statues were still, the fog had lifted, and the underground passage was nowhere to be found. It was as though the park had returned to its peaceful state, its secrets buried once again. But Emily and Kyle knew the truth. They had seen the darkness that lurked beneath the park's serene exterior. They had witnessed the cost of ignorance, the price of meddling with forces beyond human understanding. The case remained open, the disappearances unexplained. But for Emily and Kyle, Victory Park would never be the same. It was a reminder of the nature of fear, of the mysteries that lay hidden in plain sight, waiting for the curious and the brave to uncover them. The vanishing at Victory Park became a legend, a tale whispered among the locals. Some dismissed it as just another urban legend, but others knew better. They knew that sometimes the most terrifying truths were hidden in the light of day, masked by the beauty of nature and the passage of time. The Forgotten Library in the heart of the city, hidden among the modern buildings, lay the Forgotten Library. It was a relic of the past, its once grand structure now shrouded in vines and neglect. Its doors hadn't opened for decades, and its secrets had been left to gather dust in the shadows. Oliver, a bookish historian with a passion for the forgotten corners of history, had always been fascinated by the library. When he met Lily, an adventurous photographer with a love for exploring abandoned places, they decided to venture into the library together, unaware of the ancient entity that slumbered within its walls. The library was like stepping back in time. The air was thick with the scent of old books and decaying wood. Rows upon rows of dusty tomes lined the shelves, their pages yellowed with age. Lily's camera clicked as she captured the gothic beauty of the place, while Oliver ran his fingers over the spines of the books, feeling a sense of reverence for the knowledge they held. As they delved deeper into the library, they came across a secret chamber, hidden behind a movable bookshelf. It was a small room filled with ancient texts and artifacts. The air was colder here, and the silence more profound. It was in this room that Oliver found the book that would change everything. It was an old, leather-bound tome, its pages filled with strange symbols and cryptic writing. Oliver, unable to contain his curiosity, began to decipher the text. As he read aloud, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew heavier, and a sense of unease crept over them. Lily, feeling the change, urged Oliver to stop, but he was too engrossed in the book. It was then that they heard it, a whisper in the dark, a voice that seemed to come from the very walls of the library. "Who dares disturb my slumber?" The voice was ethereal, its tone filled with a mix of curiosity and anger. Oliver and Lily turned to see the spectral figure of a librarian, her form barely visible in the dim light. She floated towards them, her eyes fixed on the book in Oliver's hands. "You have awakened me," she said, her voice a mere echo. "For centuries, I have guarded these secrets, ensuring they remained undisturbed. But now you have unleashed them." Oliver, realizing the gravity of what he had done, tried to apologize, but the librarian was not appeased. She spoke of the ancient entity that the library had been built to contain, a force of knowledge and power that was never meant to be released. The library began to shake, books falling from the shelves, and the air crackling with energy. The entity was awakening, its presence filling the library with a malevolent aura. Lily, her instincts as a photographer forgotten, clung to Oliver. They watched in horror as the form of the entity began to materialize, a swirling mass of darkness and whispers. "You have disturbed the balance," the librarian said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Now, you must face the consequences." Oliver and Lily knew they had to act. Using the knowledge from the ancient texts, they began to recite an incantation, hoping to send the entity back to its slumber. The library trembled around them, the entity's roars echoing off the walls. As they chanted, the entity began to weaken, its form becoming less defined. The librarian watched, her spectral form flickering in and out of existence. With one final push of energy, Oliver and Lily completed the incantation. The entity let out a final, deafening roar before disappearing, the library falling silent once more. The librarian looked at them, a ghostly smile on her lips. "You have done well," she said before fading away, her duty fulfilled. Oliver and Lily emerged from the library, the morning sun blinding after the darkness of the library. The city around them bustled with life, unaware of the ancient battle that had just taken place. As they walked away, Oliver looked back at the library. It stood silent and forgotten, but he knew its secrets would remain with him forever. The forgotten library was more than just a building. It was a reminder of the power of knowledge and the dangers of disturbing what was meant to be left alone. For Oliver and Lily, it was an adventure they would never forget, a tale of ancient secrets and spectral guardians hidden in the heart of the city. The unseen tenant in the heart of the city stood an apartment building that seemed just like any other. It had the same red brick facade, the same bustling noises from its residents, and the same comings and goings of a typical urban life. But there was something peculiar about this building, something that new resident Hannah would soon discover. Hannah, a young professional, had just moved in, drawn by the building's charm and its proximity to her new job. It was during her first week that she met Mark, a curious neighbor who lived just one floor below. Mark had always been fascinated by the building's oddities, particularly the legend of a floor that supposedly didn't exist. One evening, as they chatted in the lobby, Mark revealed the mystery of the hidden floor. "It's like it's there, but it's not," he said, his eyes gleaming with intrigue. "The elevator has a button for it, but it never stops there. And the stairwell, it just skips over it." Hannah, skeptical yet intrigued, agreed to help Mark investigate. They began by examining the elevator. Sure enough, there was a button for the mysterious floor, but pressing it did nothing. It was as if the elevator was programmed to ignore its existence. Their next stop was the stairwell. As they counted the floors, they found that the numbers indeed skipped over the non-existent floor. Between the 8th and 10th floors, there was a blank space on the wall where a number should have been. It was then that Hannah found an old, ornate key on the stairwell floor, hidden in a corner. The key was old and rusty, its origins a mystery. They wondered if it could be related to the hidden floor. At night, Hannah couldn't shake off the sense of unease that had settled over her. She lay in bed, her thoughts swirling with questions about the building and its secret floor. The next day, Hannah and Mark decided to take their investigation further. They discovered a maintenance door in the stairwell, right where the mysterious floor should have been. The old key fit the lock perfectly, turning with a loud click. The door opened to reveal a hallway that was starkly different from the rest of the building. It was shrouded in shadows, the air stale and cold. The wallpaper was peeling, and the light fixtures flickered erratically. It was as if they had stepped into a different world, one that time had forgotten. As they ventured further, they began to experience bizarre phenomena. Doors along the hallway led to nowhere, opening only to brick walls. Their watches stopped working, and their phones lost signal, as if technology couldn't penetrate this forgotten space. Whispers echoed down the corridor, though there was no one in sight. Shadows seemed to move on their own, twisting and turning in impossible ways. The atmosphere was suffocating, the sense of being watched overwhelming. In one of the rooms, they found a diary belonging to a former resident of the hidden floor. The entries were frantic, filled with tales of strange occurrences and a feeling of being trapped in a loop of time. The resident spoke of an unseen tenant, an entity that roamed the floor, its presence malevolent. The diary's final entry was the most chilling. It spoke of a plan to confront the unseen tenant, to break free from the endless cycle. But the entry ended abruptly, the words trailing off into an incoherent scribble. Hannah and Mark realized they were not alone on this floor. The unseen tenant was there with them, its presence growing stronger with each passing moment. They decided to leave, but as they turned to go, the hallway seemed to stretch on endlessly, the door they had entered through nowhere in sight. Panic set in as they hurried down the corridor, the whispers growing louder, the shadows more menacing. Just when they thought they were lost, they stumbled upon the maintenance door. They burst through it, tumbling back into the normalcy of the stairwell. The door slammed shut behind them, the sounds from the hidden floor abruptly cut off. Back in the safety of their own apartments, Hannah and Mark struggled to process what they had experienced. The building no longer felt like a simple urban residence. It harbored a secret, a hidden floor that existed in its own distorted reality, and an unseen tenant that lurked in its shadows. The mystery of the hidden floor remained unsolved, a secret that Hannah and Mark decided to keep. They knew that some things were better left undiscovered, hidden away from the world of the living. The unseen tenant of the hidden floor remained a mystery, a whisper in the halls of the building. For Hannah and Mark, it was a reminder of the illusion of normalcy and the unseen horrors that could lurk just beneath the surface of everyday life. The echoes of Hollow Street in the outskirts of the city. There lay a desolate street known to the locals as Hollow Street. It was an unremarkable road, lined with abandoned houses and overgrown with weeds. But Hollow Street held a secret. It was said that the last words of those who had passed away there echoed endlessly, a ghostly reminder of their final moments. Greg, a pragmatic man with a scientific mind, was a skeptic of such tales. He believed there was a rational explanation for everything, including the legend of Hollow Street. Anna, on the other hand, was a firm believer in the supernatural. She was fascinated by the mysteries of the unknown and was convinced that the echoes were a portal to the other side. Driven by their opposing views, Greg and Anna decided to explore Hollow Street together, each determined to prove their point. Greg brought along an old tape recorder to capture any sounds, while Anna carried a diary she had found in a local library. The diary belonged to past visitors of the street and detailed their experiences and the words they claimed to have heard. As they walked down the street, the atmosphere changed. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over them. The houses, with their boarded-up windows and peeling paint, seemed to watch them as they passed. Greg remained skeptical, his tape recorder at the ready, while Anna read aloud from the diary. The entries spoke of sorrowful goodbyes, declarations of love, and even unspoken regrets, all echoing through the street. It was then that they heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible above the rustling of the leaves. Greg stopped in his tracks, his skepticism wavering. He held the tape recorder up, trying to capture the sound. The whispers grew louder, morphing into clear words. "Don't leave me," they echoed, a voice tinged with sadness and longing. Anna looked at Greg, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and vindication. They continued down the street, the echoes growing stronger with each step. The words were different each time, yet all shared a common thread of emotion and humanity. Greg's rational explanations began to falter as the voices surrounded them, each echo a fragment of a life once lived. As they reached the end of the street, they came across a house different from the rest. It was less decrepit, with a door that was slightly ajar. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, they entered. Inside, the house was as desolate as the street, but there was a palpable presence, as if the echoes had found a home within its walls. Greg and Anna explored the rooms, each step echoing on the wooden floor. In one of the rooms, they found a photograph of a young couple, smiling and full of life. The diary fell open in Anna's hands, revealing an entry about the couple, whose last words were among the echoes of Hollow Street. The revelation hit close to home for Anna. She revealed to Greg that her interest in Hollow Street was personal. The woman in the photograph was her great-aunt, who had passed away under mysterious circumstances on this very street. As night fell, the echoes grew louder, more insistent. Greg's tape recorder captured every word, but it was no longer about proving or disproving the legend. It was about understanding, about connecting with the voices that lingered in the air. The final revelation came when they played back the recordings. Among the myriad of voices, they heard a new one, clear and distinct. "Find peace," it said. It was Anna's great-aunt, her voice reaching out from the past. The experience changed both Greg and Anna. Greg, though still a man of science, had gained a new perspective on the mysteries of life and death. Anna found a sense of closure, a connection to her past that she had longed for. They left Hollow Street with more than they had bargained for. A tape full of voices from the past and a diary chronicling the experiences of those who had walked the street before them. The echoes of Hollow Street were more than just a legend. They were a testament to the power of words, the final messages of those who had once lived and loved. The street remained desolate, its houses silent and brooding. But for those who listened closely, the echoes continued to whisper, a bridge between the living and the dead, a reminder of the stories and secrets that linger in forgotten places. The curse of the crimson moon. In the heart of the city, under the glow of a rare crimson moon, an air of unease settled over the streets. This was no ordinary lunar event. It was the crimson moon, a celestial phenomenon shrouded in ancient myths and dark prophecies. It was said that when the moon turned crimson, bizarre and terrifying events would unfold. Zoe, an aspiring astronomer, had always been fascinated by celestial events. But the crimson moon intrigued her for more than its scientific rarity. She was drawn to the legends that surrounded it. Her curiosity led her to Jake, a local legend enthusiast with an extensive knowledge of the city's myths. Together, they set out to explore the city under the eerie red glow, unaware of the otherworldly dangers they would face. As they walked through the deserted streets, the changes were immediately apparent. The city, usually bustling with life, was unnervingly silent. The only sound was the occasional howl of the wind, which seemed to carry whispers of ancient voices. The first sign that something was amiss came from the animals. Dogs barked incessantly, their eyes reflecting the crimson light in a disturbing way. Cats prowled the streets, their movements erratic and unnatural. Birds flew in disoriented patterns, as if the crimson moon had disrupted their senses. Zoe and Jake pressed on, driven by a mixture of fear and fascination. They noticed that the environment was changing too. The air felt thicker, and a faint, inexplicable fog began to roll in, blanketing the streets in a ghostly shroud. Their journey led them to the heart of the city, where the effects of the crimson moon were even more pronounced. Streetlights flickered and went out, plunging the streets into darkness. Shadows seemed to move on their own, twisting into grotesque shapes. It was then that the disasters began. A series of unexplainable events struck the city. Windows shattered without cause, alarms blared from every direction, and the ground trembled as if in the grip of an unseen force. Zoe and Jake found themselves in a fight for survival, dodging falling debris and navigating the chaotic streets. Amidst the chaos, they came across an old library, its doors mysteriously ajar. Inside, they found an ancient book containing a prophecy about the crimson moon. It spoke of a curse that would befall the city, a night when the boundary between worlds would thin, unleashing spirits and creatures of the night. The prophecy was becoming a reality, and Zoe and Jake realized that they needed to find a way to end the curse. The book hinted at a ritual that could be performed to appease the spirits and close the gateway between worlds. The key to the ritual was in the alignment of the celestial bodies, something Zoe understood well. With time running out and the city descending into madness, they raced to the highest point in the city, the old observatory. There, they had a clear view of the sky and could perform the ritual. As they set up their makeshift altar, the moon reached its highest point, bathing the city in a blood-red light. The air crackled with energy, and the sense of impending doom grew stronger. Zoe began the ritual, reciting the ancient words from the book, while Jake arranged the celestial charts and symbols around them. The wind howled, and the crimson light intensified, as if the moon itself was responding to their actions. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and a deafening roar filled the air. Shadows swirled around them, forming into spectral figures that circled the observatory. Zoe continued the ritual, her voice unwavering despite the terror that surrounded them. As she spoke the final words, a blinding light burst from the moon, illuminating the city in a brilliant crimson glow. The ground stilled, the shadows dissipated, and the eerie fog lifted. The moon slowly began to fade back to its usual silver, its crimson light ebbing away. The city was silent, the chaos of the night subsiding. Zoe and Jake looked at each other, exhaustion and relief written on their faces. They had faced the curse of the crimson moon and survived. As dawn broke, the city began to stir, its residents emerging to find a world that was once again normal. But for Zoe and Jake, the night's events would forever be etched in their memories. The crimson moon became a legend, a story passed down through generations. It was a reminder of the influence of celestial events on human fate and the unpredictability of nature. But for those who had lived through it, it was a testament to the courage and resilience of the human spirit in the face of otherworldly dangers. Whispers of Gallows End. Elise Hendrickson's boots crunched on the autumn leaves that blanketed the cobblestone path leading into Gallows End. The village was an enigma, draped in stories of the supernatural and whispers of the past that echoed through the desolate streets. Elise, with her camera slung over her shoulder, was determined to capture the eerie beauty of this place long forsaken by time. The air in Gallows End was thick with mist that clung to the skin like a damp cloak. Elise's breath came out in white puffs as she clicked her camera, the old device seeming almost in harmony with the time-worn scenery. Her intent was to create a photo essay that would breathe life into the ghostly whispers of the village. She came across Ian, an old-timer with eyes as deep as the mysteries that shrouded the village. "The beauty here is just a facade," he said, his voice a soft warning. "Don't stir the peace of the ones who've departed. They don't take kindly to the curious." Elise nodded politely but didn't take his words to heart. Ian was just a product of the village's superstitions, she told herself. As the day turned to dusk, the village transformed. Shadows lengthened, and the soft golden light gave the dilapidated buildings a summer glow. That night, in the dimly lit room of the inn, Elise developed her photos. The pictures should have shown the decayed charm of Gallows End, but instead, they revealed figures draped in shadows where no one had stood. Elise's heart skipped a beat. She convinced herself it was just a trick of light, a fault in her vintage camera. The next day, driven by a mix of fear and intrigue, Elise wandered to the village cemetery. It was there, among the neglected and moss-covered headstones, that she found it, a headstone with her own name etched into the weathered stone. Elise Hendrickson, it read, with today's date as the day of her death. A cold dread settled in her chest, her hands trembling. Ian's voice came from behind. "You've seen it, haven't you? The fate that awaits." Elise whirled around, her eyes wide with terror. "This is a joke, right? You set this up to scare me." "No joke, miss," Ian replied, his face a tapestry of sorrow and fear. "This village, it captures souls. Your camera has seen the truth." She wanted to run, to escape the madness that seemed to seep from the very ground of Gallows End. But her journalist's curiosity anchored her. "What do you mean, captures souls?" she demanded. Ian sat on a crumbling gravestone, his voice beginning the tale Elise would never forget. "Long ago, this village was cursed. A traveler like yourself came through, capturing images of the village and its people. But with each picture he took, a life was claimed by the curse, trapping them in a moment for eternity. They say the curse lives on, seeking those who dared to disturb the peace." Elise's mind raced. It was impossible. It had to be. But the photos, the headstone with her name, they were real. She spent the day with Ian, listening to stories that blurred the lines between legend and reality. As the sun began to set, she decided to try and leave Gallows End, to escape the growing terror that clawed at her. She packed her bags and hurried through the village, but with each step, the fog grew thicker, the path more convoluted. The village wouldn't let her leave. It was then that Elise realized the inescapability of fate that Ian had spoken of. The village and its curse were inseparable, a single entity of malice. Desperate, Elise raised her camera, thinking if she could just understand the curse, she could find a way to break it. She clicked the shutter, capturing the mist, the houses, the graves. When she developed these last pictures, they showed not just ghostly figures but scenes of the past, of the traveler who brought the curse, of each soul claimed, and in the last photo, an image of herself, standing at the edge of the village, as if caught between worlds. The terror that gripped Elise was no longer just fear. It was resignation to the truth that Ian's tales weren't just stories. They were warnings, preludes to the inescapable fate that now embraced her. Gallows End was not a place to be captured in photos. It was a place that captured you. The veil between past and present was thin here, and Elise had stepped through it with every picture she took. As the final rays of sunlight disappeared, Elise accepted the melancholy embrace of the village. The camera fell from her hands, its uncanny power spent, its body just as lifeless as the stones it lay upon. Elise's last breath was a whisper that melded with the wind, her spirit just another echo of Gallows End. And in the village, time moved on, a cycle unbroken, where the whispers of the past warned the living, and the camera lay silent, a relic that saw too much, and in the end, captured the very soul it was meant to free. The unholy game. Alex and Jenna stood at the threshold of the forsaken church in Gallows End, their hearts beating a reckless rhythm of excitement and fear. They were an unlikely duo. Alex, the teenage daredevil with a taste for adrenaline, and Jenna, the skeptic, her mind a fortress against the town's superstitious whispers. The church loomed over them, a silhouette against the moonlit sky, its spire like a finger accusing the heaven. The air was still, as if waiting for the echo of a long-forgotten hymn. It was the perfect setting for a dare, a test of courage that had lured many but triumphed over all. "Are you ready to play?" Alex's voice was a mix of challenge and anticipation. Jenna rolled her eyes. "The forbidden game is just an old legend. Alex, nothing's going to happen." The game was simple yet forbidden. A chant to summon the church's guardian entity, whispered only by the most daring or foolish. With a shared glance, they stepped into the hollow sanctuary, their footsteps disturbing years of silence. The game began with a chant, their voices soft but growing bolder with each repetition. As they reached the climax, the air shifted, a chill that seeped into their very bones. A shadow danced at the edge of their vision, formless and silent. Jenna's skepticism wavered. "Did you see that?" Her voice was a whisper of genuine fear. "It's just your imagination," Alex retorted, but his voice lacked conviction. The shadow figures multiplied, fleeting at the corners of their eyes, too many to be dismissed as mere tricks of the light. Their fear escalated to panic as the shadows took form, dark figures that mirrored their movements, taunting them with an unseen presence. The game had awakened something sinister, a darkness that the church had kept chained in its bowels for centuries. "We need to get out of here," Jenna said, her earlier skepticism abandoned in the face of the undeniable. They stumbled toward the exit, but the door slammed shut with an otherworldly force, the echo of the bang a death knell in the silent church. In their frantic search for another way out, they discovered a hidden passage beneath the altar, a narrow, winding staircase that descended into the earth. The underground passage was suffocating, the walls pressing close, and the darkness absolute. Their flashlights flickered over ancient symbols etched into the stone, warnings unheeded. The air was thick with the stench of decay and the weight of despair. As they navigated the oppressive labyrinth, the entity played its sinister game. Jenna's voice called out to Alex from the darkness, luring him deeper into the passage. But Jenna was beside him, her hand gripping his in a vice of terror. Whatever was calling him was mimicking her voice, a ghostly imitation that aimed to divide them. They clung together, their belief in the tangibility of the world around them shaken. The danger of underestimating folklore became a reality they could not deny. The power of their belief, once a shield of skepticism, was now a weapon turned against them, fueling the entity's strength. The passage seemed endless, a maze designed not to confine a beast, but to trap the souls of the living. Whispers filled the air, a cacophony of their own voices, promises of escape that tempted them to let go, to give in. But amidst the chaos of their own echoed fears, a sliver of hope surfaced. The entity fed on belief, on the fears that belief fostered. If they could reject the reality of the entity, perhaps they could weaken it. Jenna, with a courage forged in the heart of her skepticism, began to chant again. Not the forbidden words that had started this nightmare, but words of dismissal, of denial. She denied the entity's existence, its power, its very presence. Alex joined her, their voices rising in a dual incantation of negation. The walls of the passage shivered with their conviction, the whispers of the entity fading into silence. At last, they emerged from the underground passage, not into the church, but into the cool night air of the village. The church stood silent, its doors now open, as if it had never barred their escape. They looked back at Gallows End, its darkness now just the absence of light, not the presence of something malevolent. The entity had retreated, its power diminished by their disbelief. Shaken, they left the village behind, its tales of terror and whispers of the past a fading nightmare. They had faced the darkest part of Gallows End and survived. Their friendship a testament to the strength that comes not from fear, but from facing it. And as the first rays of dawn touched the spire of the church, Gallows End whispered once more, a warning to those who would dare play the games of the forgotten, a warning that would go unheeded until the next thrill-seeker arrived, until the next skeptic dared to question. The village would wait, timeless and patient, for the cycle of belief and fear was unending, and the game, as it was in the beginning, would always find new players. Whispers and warnings. The air in Gallows End was thick with unspoken tales, whispers of the dead swirling in the mist that blanketed the village like a shroud. Paranormal investigator Richard Sloan had heard the murmurs, the tales that spoke of a place where the veil between worlds was threadbare. Beside him, medium Abigail Lee walked with quiet confidence, her connection to the spirit world a beacon in the oppressive gloom. They had come to communicate with the spirits of Gallows End, to record evidence of the afterlife that Richard's scientific mind craved. The village, desolate and forgotten by the bustling world, was a perfect canvas for their work. Yet, something in the air suggested that they were the ones being observed, studied by unseen eyes. As they passed the dilapidated houses, Abigail paused, her breath visible in the cold air. "There's a presence here," she whispered, her voice a thread of silk against the coarse backdrop of the village. "It's peaceful, but sorrowful." Richard readied his equipment, the lenses and sensors his talismans against the unknown. He watched as Abigail's eyes closed, her spirit reaching out to the one that lingered. A connection was made, and a message delivered, a warning of a malevolent force that lay in wait, eager for the unwary. The church stood at the heart of the village, its bell tower silent, its doors open as if in invitation. This was where they would hold their seance, where Abigail would bridge the worlds, and Richard would capture the unimaginable. Candles flickered as they began, the light casting shadows that danced with macabre grace. Abigail's voice rose and fell in an ancient cadence, reaching out to those who had passed. The peaceful spirit came first, its presence a light touch against their minds, a whisper of thanks for hearing its plight. But the seance turned violent. The candles snuffed out by an unseen force as a cold wind howled through the open doors. The entity took physical form, a swirling mass of shadows with eyes that burned with malice. It was ancient, a darkness that had festered in the village's heart, its power woven into the very stones of the church. Richard's equipment, designed to capture ghostly whispers and spectral images, now recorded a more sinister spectacle. His monitors flickered with otherworldly light, and his audio devices captured a voice, a spectral message that chilled the blood. "Leave this place," the voice commanded, its tone laced with an urgency that brooked no argument. The guardian stirs. The spirits of Gallows End, once residents and now ethereal guardians, fought to protect Richard and Abigail. They were flashes of light against the darkness, their presence a barrier between the living and the entity that sought to claim them. Abigail's voice became a chant, a plea for the peaceful spirits to aid them. The church shook with the battle unseen, the air electric with the power of her words. Richard, though a man of science, found himself whispering his own pleas to whatever gods might listen. They fled the church, the entity's rage a tangible force that pursued them. The spirit's protection waned as they crossed the boundary of the sacred ground, their power tethered to the land that held their remains. In the village, Richard and Abigail caught their breath, their bodies trembling with exertion and terror. The equipment that Richard had so carefully calibrated was silent now, its purpose served. The recordings would be analyzed, scrutinized for evidence of the otherworldly encounter. But as they left Gallows End, a final message played from the audio device, a spectral whisper that bore the weight of a timeless warning. "The Guardian is awake," it said, and the silence that followed was more terrifying than any threat. The duality of the spirit world had been laid bare before them, a realm where peace could walk hand in hand with unspeakable evil. Their attempt to communicate had stirred the ancient demonic force, a consequence they had not intended but now could not ignore. Richard and Abigail left Gallows End with more than evidence. They carried with them a burden, a knowledge that some places were meant to be left in silence, some whispers left unheeded. The spirits had attempted to protect them, but now the guardian of Gallows End was awake, its gaze turned outward, searching for new souls to entwine in its dark embrace. And in the village, the candles flickered once more in the church, lighting of their own accord. The spirits whispered amongst themselves, a lament for the peace that had been broken. Gallows End waited, its story unfolding with each unwary visitor, its whispers a warning that few would heed until it was too late. The cycle of Gallows End in the hush of the local archives. History professor Lucas Grant and Evelyn Price, a passionate local historian, pored over dusty tomes and brittle maps of Gallows End. They were drawn together by a shared obsession, the curse that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat beneath the village's history. Their latest discovery was a cryptic journal, penned by the village's enigmatic founder. The looping script spoke of rituals and celestial events, of a darkness that demanded to be fed by the cycle of the village sorrow. It was a historian's goldmine and a chilling testament to the curse that seemed more than mere superstition. As they translated the archaic language, Lucas and Evelyn felt the thrill of intellectual pursuit. But outside the safety of the archives, the village bore witness to a disturbing pattern. Disappearances, ones that mirrored the vague and ominous events described in the journal, were occurring again. Each vanishing was a shadow on the wall, a dark echo of the past. A sense of existential horror grew as the two historians dug deeper into the journal. They unearthed a timeline, a sequence of events that led to calamity every time it concluded. And the cycle, as they soon realized with a growing sense of dread, was nearing its next zenith. They tried to warn the villagers, but their words were met with dismissive shakes of the head and the doors closing in their faces. The curse of Gallows End was an old story, too ancient to be more than a ghost tale to scare children. But the journal was more than a record. It seemed to be an active participant in the unfolding horror. The ancient runes that dotted its pages began to appear throughout the village, etched in blood against the stones and trees. With every rune found, the atmosphere thickened, the sky above the village darkened, as if the very cosmos were conspiring to close the loop of the cycle. As the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, Lucas and Evelyn found themselves not as observers of history, but as its potential victims. The curse was not just a cycle, it was a trap, one that snared the unwary, those driven by the pursuit of knowledge. Lucas looked out at the village square from the archives window, his gaze tracing the runes that now seemed to emerge from the very earth itself. "It's a warning," he said, his voice a whisper of realization. "The cycle, we're meant to stop it. But how?" Evelyn's eyes were wide with fear as she scanned the journal's final entry. "We don't stop it," she murmured. "We complete it. We're not just researchers, we're part of it." The final rune appeared on the church door, glowing with an otherworldly light as the sun began to set. The village was silent, too silent, as if it were holding its breath. Lucas and Evelyn understood. They were to be the next to disappear, to become another unsolved mystery, another part of the village's haunted landscape. The curse of Gallows End was not just a series of unfortunate events. It was a conscious, malevolent force that required the sacrifice of those who dared to unveil its secrets. The more they knew, the deeper they were entangled in its web. As the clock tower chimed the hour, Lucas and Evelyn felt the weight of history upon them. Their curiosity, once a flame that illuminated the dark, now felt like a beacon that drew the shadows ever closer. With resolve, they took up the journal and walked together to the church. If they were to disappear, they would do so on their terms, facing the darkness with eyes wide open. They would leave behind their own record, an addition to the journal, a new chapter that would warn the next seekers of truth. The village of Gallows End watched in silence as the door to the church closed behind them. Inside, the echo of their voices reciting the ancient runes mingled with the shadows. And then there was silence. And when the villagers finally dared to open the church doors, Lucas and Evelyn were gone. The journal lay open on the altar, its pages fluttering in a breeze that smelled of ancient earth. On the last page, in Lucas's neat script, were the words, "The cycle continues, but let this be a guide for those who follow. Beware the curse of knowledge, for it is the food that feeds the darkness of Gallows End." Outside, the runes faded from sight, but their power lingered, a testament to the cyclical nature of history and the fine line between ignorance and the perilous pursuit of knowledge. Gallows End would remember, in whispers and in silence, waiting for the cycle to begin anew. Echoes of Gallows End. Meribeth's heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and unease as she stood before the dilapidated house that was now, unbelievably, hers. The property, a legacy from a distant relative she barely remembered, loomed over Gallows End with its darkened windows like sightless eyes. Her husband, Dean, a man of logic and reason, offered a reassuring smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Renovations began under a cloud-draped sky, the old house creaking and groaning as if protesting against the intrusion. As walls were stripped and floors pried up, Meribeth stumbled upon a hidden compartment containing a diary, its pages yellowed with age. The diary belonged to a woman who lived in the house a century prior. And as Meribeth read the entries, an eerie sensation washed over her. This woman's life, her dreams, and fears seemed to mirror Meribeth's own. The house, with its peeling wallpaper and echoing halls, felt alive with whispers of the past. Objects began to move inexplicably. A picture frame would appear on the opposite side of the room. A vase of flowers would find its way to the floor, petals scattered like silent screams. Driven by an otherworldly compulsion, Meribeth traced the trail of these displaced objects to a secret room, sealed behind a false wall. The air was thick with the scent of old perfume and whispers of forgotten conversations. It was a perfectly preserved parlor, a snapshot of a bygone era, yet it felt strangely familiar to Meribeth. As days slipped by, Dean watched with growing concern as his wife's behavior became increasingly bizarre. She would drift through the rooms, her hands tracing the antique furniture, her eyes distant. Meribeth's voice, when she spoke, took on a cadence that wasn't her own. It was as if the woman from the diary was reawakening, using Meribeth as a vessel. At night, the house came alive with the echoes of its past residents. Meribeth and Dean, trapped in a haunting play, found themselves reenacting scenes straight from the pages of the diary. They argued with fervor they didn't feel, danced to music that wasn't playing, and whispered secrets in the dead of night. The overlapping of past and present lives became increasingly pronounced, with Meribeth fading into the persona of the diary's author. Her once modern clothes were replaced with the high collars and long skirts of a century ago. Dean tried to reach her, to remind her of who she was, but Meribeth was slipping away, her identity being buried under the weight of history. Haunted by the realization that his wife was becoming a stranger, Dean searched desperately for a way to break the connection. He scoured the diary for an answer, for any clue that could save Meribeth from being consumed by the life of another. The answer came on a stormy night when lightning illuminated the diary's final entry, a plea from the woman of the past, trapped within the walls of her own home by an unyielding love and a tragic demise. It was not the house that was haunted, but the diary itself, an anchor holding the woman's spirit in a perpetual cycle of her last days. Dean, driven by love and fear, made a choice. He took the diary and set it ablaze in the fireplace of the secret parlor. The flames consumed the pages, and as they did, the house shook with the force of a pent-up storm breaking free. Meribeth collapsed, the spirit that had been merging with her own screaming its way out of her body, its hold broken by the burning of its last tie to the world. Dean rushed to her side, cradling his wife as the echoes of the past faded into silence, the house settling into a peaceful quiet for the first time in a century. When the morning came, the sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the house that no longer watched over Gallows End with dark intentions. Meribeth, her eyes clear and her own once more, stood hand in hand with Dean, ready to rebuild not just the house, but their lives. Yet, as they left the parlor, a cold spot lingered by the fireplace, a silent reminder that history never truly dies in Gallows End. It simply waits, an echo of lives once lived, for someone to listen once more. Whispers in the ruins. Mia and Elliot, armed with the immortal courage of childhood, ignored the stern warnings of their parents and ventured towards the ruins that perched on the edge of Gallows End. The sun hung low, casting elongated shadows that turned the ruins into a playground of ghosts. Their game was simple: pretend. They were explorers in a long-forgotten land, kings and queens of old, warriors of legend. But as they delved deeper into the broken skeleton of a once vibrant village, their game unearthed a relic of the past. A doll, its glassy eyes and cracked porcelain skin were seated upon a throne of rubble. Elliot, the younger and more sensitive of the two, hesitated, sensing a silent scream in the stillness of those lifeless eyes. Mia, with the fearless invincibility of an elder sister, scoffed and placed the doll atop a fallen beam, proclaiming it the guardian of their imaginary kingdom. As the evening crept upon them and the sky bled into a tapestry of purples and blues, a chilling wind whispered through the ruins. It was then that the children's innocent laughter was met with another, a child's giggle, not belonging to either of them, curling around the pillars and through the broken archways. Elliot clutched Mia's arm. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice a mix of excitement and fear. "It's just the wind," Mia replied, though her heart had begun to race. The game shifted, the air tinged with an unspoken urgency. "Let's play hide and seek," Mia suggested, and before Elliot could agree, she turned away to count. 1, 2, 3. Elliot hid behind a crumbling wall, his breath held tight in his chest. But as Mia's counting reached 10, it wasn't her voice that called out to him. It was a whisper, a ghostly child's voice, inviting him to play forever in the ruins. The children found themselves caught in a looping game of hide and seek. The ghostly child always one step ahead, its laughter echoing from the stones. They hid under arches, behind statues, in the shadows of what were once homes, but the game continued, and the sky darkened. Fear replaced the thrill of the game. No matter where they hid, the ghostly child found them, its giggles growing louder, closer, never seen but always felt. The ruins became a labyrinth, their familiar paths twisted and strange. Mia and Elliot huddled together, realizing the only way to end the game was to break its rules. They must not hide, they must seek the one who was calling them. Together, they followed the whispers, the laughter leading them to the heart of the ruins where the doll sat, its eyes seeming to follow their every move. With trembling hands, Mia reached for the doll, its glassy eyes now flickering with a sinister light. "I found you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A silence, heavy and absolute, fell upon the ruins. The doll's eyes dimmed, its power broken. The children, released from the game's sinister grip, ran from the ruins, not stopping until the comforting lights of their homes pierced the encroaching night. That evening, as their parents tucked them into bed, relief washed over the families of Gallows End. But in the stillness of the night, the villagers heard the distant sound of children's laughter, the echoes of a game that had almost claimed two more. The ruins, now quiet, watched over the village, a warning of the perils of curiosity and the price of innocence lost. For in the game of hide and seek with a ghost, the next hiding place might just be beyond the veil, in a world where playtime lasts forever. Echoes of the Damned in the Silent Embrace of Gallows End. Thomas Wright, a horror author with a hunger for the macabre, sought the whispers of inspiration among the desolate stones. His guide, Eliza, a young local with eyes like storm clouds, moved among the ruins as one might in a house they wished they had never called home. The atmosphere in the village was thick, the air holding its breath, the ground saturated with untold stories. Eliza's reluctance was a tangible shroud. Her every step a story she dared not tell. Why so silent, Eliza? Thomas probed as they walked, his voice a gentle nudge against her reticence. It's not the speaking that I fear, Mr. Wright, she whispered. It's what will answer back. As the days bled into nights, Thomas's pen began to dance with fervor, ink flowing like the blood of Gallows End's forgotten tales. The stories that emerged were not his own but belonged to the spirits that clung to Eliza's shadow, a literary seance that he could not control. The narrative spun tales of an ancestral curse, one that had wrapped Eliza's lineage in chains of despair. The house where she dwelled alone stood as a silent testament to her family's dark legacy, its very foundation a chronicle of horrors untold. One night, guided by the whispers in his head, Thomas and Eliza descended into the bowels of her forsaken home. Behind a wall, disguised by years and ivy, they found the heart of Eliza's dread, a chamber untouched by time, adorned with relics of rituals and worship to the village's dark history. The room welcomed them with an air of expectance, as if it had lain in wait for the rightful heirs of its secrets. And there, amidst the shadows and echoes of chants long silenced, Thomas's latest piece unfolded before their eyes. It was not written by his hand, yet it bore his name, a foretelling of doom that threatened to leak from the pages into their reality. Eliza's voice broke the silence, her tone a mix of awe and horror. The stories, they are alive, aren't they? You're writing, it's not fiction. It's a prophecy. Thomas, with eyes wide and mind reeling, could only nod. His words, once a source of pride, now formed a tapestry of terror, predicting a series of ominous events that mirrored the misfortunes of Eliza's ancestors. The curse was not content with the past, it hungered for the present, and they were to be its feast. In a desperate bid to break the cycle, Thomas urged Eliza to confront the specters of her lineage. As they recited passages from the prophetic writings, the spirits manifested, twisted visages of anguish, each a bearer of the family's cursed legacy, reaching out to claim Eliza as their own. The chamber became a vortex of spectral lights and wails, a hurricane of retribution. Eliza, with a strength born of generations of suffering, stood her ground. I am not my ancestors, she declared, her voice a defiant blade cutting through the darkness. Their sins are not my shackles. With each word spoken, the spirits wavered, the chamber's grip loosened, and the curse recoiled, its power dwindling as the truth of Eliza's declaration took hold. The writing on the walls, once an ominous script, faded, and the chamber began to crumble, the relics of the past turning to dust. As dawn broke over Gallows End, the house stood silent, the chamber beneath it a forgotten nightmare. Eliza, with a spirit cleansed of her family's past, looked upon the ruins of the village with new eyes. Thomas, his muse now silent, realized that the true story of Gallows End was not one of horror, but of liberation. The novel he would write would speak of a young recluse named Eliza, who faced the echoes of the damned and emerged not as a character in a tale of terror, but as a heroine in a story of redemption. And in the heart of the village, where dread once reigned, a new echo arose, not of spirits or curses, but of hope, whispering on the wind that sometimes the most haunting tales are those that end with the breaking of chains. Whispers of Gallows End. Melissa prided herself on being a rational person, which made her the most charismatic ghost tour guide in Gallows End. With a skeptic's smile, she narrated the village's chilling legends to wide-eyed tourists, never believing a word. That was until the night she met the man in the cloak. It was a moonless evening when he joined the tour, his presence a silent shadow at the back of the group. As Melissa spun tales of the undead, the man's eyes, dark and knowing, seemed to pierce the veil between the living and the dead. The village founder, they say, could command the spirits, Melissa recited with a theatrical flair, unaware of the guest's lineage. The cloaked figure stepped forward, his voice a whisper that cut through the night. Command them. No, he was at their mercy, just like us. His words, though barely audible, sent a shiver through the group. Melissa laughed it off, but a flicker of unease sparked within her. As the night unfurled, the man seemed to disappear only to reappear at pivotal moments of the tour, each time closer to Melissa. As they reached the heart of the village, a dense mist enveloped them. Shapes moved within it, specters of the past enacting their eternal tragedies. Melissa's heart raced. These were not her actors. These were the characters of her stories made flesh and blood. The cloaked guest stood beside her, his eyes reflecting the ghastly scenes. "The Founder's blood runs through both our veins," he said. "You're not just a narrator, Melissa. You're part of the story." Melissa stumbled backward, her mind reeling. Her grandmother's whispered confessions on her deathbed, once dismissed as the ramblings of the old, now rang with terrifying clarity. She was a descendant of the cursed founder, the man who had entwined his lineage with the shadows. The legends she told with such detachment were her heritage. And as the night progressed, the village's spectral residents seemed to recognize her. Phantoms of the past reached out, beckoning her to join them in their eternal lament. Melissa turned to the mysterious guest, his figure blurred within the mist. "Why reveal this now?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Because the village needs you to acknowledge the curse," he said, his voice echoing from the shadows. "To break it, you must confront it, accept it." The tour group had scattered, lost in the fog, leaving Melissa alone with the man who claimed to be her kin. She realized that she was not leading the tour but being led, each step a descent into her own blood-soaked legacy. With each revelation, the spectral performances grew more intense, the village's bloody history replaying with macabre detail. Melissa watched, frozen, as the horrors her family had wrought were laid bare. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the mist cleared. The ghostly actors vanished, leaving an oppressive silence. Melissa stood alone in the village square, the man nowhere to be seen. Her disbelief had been a shield, but now, with the truth of her ancestry laid bare, the shield was shattered. Gallows End had opened its heart to her, showing her the reality behind the legends she had so often scoffed at. As dawn broke, Melissa made her decision. The tour would end, but her quest was just beginning. She would delve into her family's history, uncover every secret, and face the curse head-on. For she was Melissa of Gallows End, the last of the Founder's line, and she would not let the shadows claim her as they had claimed so many before. The village would find peace, not through fear and ghost stories, but through the courage of one who had once disbelieved. And in the years to come, new tales would be told of the night when the tour guide became part of the legend, and how she faced the whispers of Gallows End with an open heart and a defiant spirit. Beyond the Vale of Salt in the heart of Gallows End stood a quaint little shop that beckoned the forlorn and the desperate with the promise of otherworldly connection. It was here that Sarah, a silhouette of sorrow, sought the services of Madame Morrow, a medium known for piercing the veil between the living and the dead. Sarah's heart was a bramble of grief since the death of her beloved husband. She longed for one last whisper, one final goodbye. Madame Morrow, with her eyes like lanterns in the fog, had assured her that the bonds of love could reach beyond the grave. The night of the séance was moonless, the air pregnant with anticipation. Madame Morrow arranged the room meticulously, with a circle of salt as the boundary between worlds. It was a fortress in granules, a protection against the unknown. Candles flickered as Sarah and the medium took their places within the circle, hands clasped, breaths held in a ballet of hope and fear. Madame Morrow's voice, rich and otherworldly, called to the spirits, her words painting Sarah's longing in the ether. "Spirit of the one Sarah holds dear, hear our call and draw near," intoned Madame Morrow. The air tightened, the candle flames danced wildly, and a cold wind circled the room. A figure appeared, a ghostly imprint of Sarah's husband. Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she reached out, her fingers trembling. "Michael," she whispered, the name a talisman against the engulfing darkness. But the séance stirred more than just her beloved spirit. Shadows crept closer to the salt barrier, whispers multiplied, and the temperature dropped into a chill of despair. Madame Morrow's voice wavered as she sensed the intrusion of unwanted entities. Sarah, lost in her yearning, broke the circle to touch her husband's apparition. The salt line scattered, a breach in the fortress. In the wake of her actions, a torrent of spirits surged through, a cascade of the lost and the damned. The medium's eyes blazed with fear and recognition. These were spirits she had encountered before, spirits that had a history with Gallows End, and with her own tragic past. She had come to the village to escape the ghost of her daughter, who she had tried and failed to resurrect years ago. "Seal the circle," Madame Morrow's voice thundered, but it was too late. The room was a tempest of spectral cries, the air a canvas for the tormented souls of the village. Sarah saw her husband's apparition contort in agony, his face no longer just his own, but a mask of countless others. The séance had become a doorway, and in their quest for a single voice, they had opened it to a chorus of anguish. The spirits swirled around Sarah, their whispers clashing into a cacophony of grief. Her heart broke for them, for her husband, for herself. The agony of holding on clashed with the terror of letting go. Madame Morale, realizing the cost of her ambition to defeat death, channeled all her energy, invoking every protective charm she knew. The spirits recoiled as she rebuilt the barrier, her own spirit resonating with the power of her love and her loss. By the ties that bind and the love that remains, I command thee, return to the plane of shadows, she cried. With a final, ear-splitting wail, the spirits retreated, sucked back into the void they had come from. The candles extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. When the lights returned, the air was clear, but the weight of what had happened pressed heavily in the room. Sarah sat, motionless, her heart aching in a way that was new and raw. Madame Morale, with eyes dimmed by exhaustion, whispered a sorrowful apology. She had wanted to give Sarah peace but had instead brought forth a maelstrom. As the sun rose, casting light on the havoc, Sarah understood the danger of dwelling on what's lost. Her desire to reconnect had opened a portal that was better left closed. She had sought closure, but in its pursuit, had found chaos. In the aftermath, Sarah's journey through grief changed. She found solace in the memories she carried, the love that was shared, and the acceptance that some farewells were silent. The circle of salt, once broken, was now a circle of healing in her heart, and Madame Morale, faced with the echoes of her past, embraced her own need for forgiveness. Gallows End, with its whispers and shadows, held them both in its history, reminding them that some doors, once opened, demand the greatest of sacrifices to be closed. Live stream of The Damned. The village of Gallows End was a place forgotten by time, but Kayla and Shane aimed to thrust its chilling tales into the digital age. With their camera gear and eager online followers, they set out to live stream a night in the village, seeking to capture undeniable proof of the paranormal. Their venture began with a flippant tone, as they cracked jokes and teased about the so-called curses and hauntings. Their followers ate it up, flooding the chat with emojis and dares. The air of modern irreverence was tangible as they walked the cobblestone paths, their cameras streaming every moment. As night fell, the lighthearted banter faded. The first sign of trouble was a flicker in their equipment, screens glitched, and battery levels drained rapidly. Shane's normally steady hand faltered as an unexplainable chill swept through them. "Did you see that?" Kayla gasped, pointing to a shadow that darted across the screen. The chat exploded with viewers retelling what they'd glimpsed. A shape, a face, something not quite human. Eager to keep their audience engaged, they followed the apparitions into the heart of the village, the churchyard, where ancient stones leaned heavily with the weight of time. Here, the air buzzed with unseen energy, and the poltergeist activity began. Tombstones trembled, and the gates creaked open and shut as if greeting unseen visitors. Shane's laughter turned to curses as his camera spun from his grasp, seemingly yanked by invisible hands. Online, their followers were a mix of skeptics and believers, their comments a cascade of fear and fascination. The chat dared them to venture deeper into the crumbling church itself. Kayla and Shane, driven by the allure of viral fame, pushed open the heavy wooden door. The moment they entered, the live stream warped, showing images of the past, a time when the church was filled with whispers of witchcraft and the cries of the unjustly accused. Their equipment buzzed with the distorted sounds of old hymns and anguished pleas. The viewers were enraptured, their screen filled with the overlapping timelines of Gallows End. Kayla and Shane, however, were not watchers but unwilling participants in a history repeating itself. As they stood at the pulpit, a figure manifested before them, a priest from another era, his eyes hollow with condemnation. The specter reached out, and Shane stumbled back, his camera capturing the moment his laughter died. Their final live stream was a harrowing tableau of old-world horror clashing with modern reality. The entity, a relic of the village's tormented legacy, moved towards them, its intent clear. This was no spectacle. This was survival. Shane's shouts for Kayla to run were punctuated by the sound of the church bells tolling, not heard for a century. The followers, once amused, now watched in horror, their comments pleas for the duo to escape. In the final frames of the stream, Kayla turned the camera upon herself, her face a mask of fear, and behind her, the church dissolved into a vision of its own fiery destruction from long ago. The chat was silent, the emojis gone, replaced by the stark reality that they had witnessed something beyond entertainment. The stream cut abruptly, leaving only a screen filled with digital static and the echo of Kayla's final scream. The footage, once thought to be the key to their fame, became evidence of their disappearance. The documentarians had sought to capture the supernatural, to make spectacles of suffering for the world to see. Instead, they became part of the village's legacy, their own story enshrined in the annals of Gallows End. Their followers, once eager for thrills, were left with the voyeuristic guilt of having witnessed true horror unfold in real time. The village reclaimed its secrets, and the streams of the damned played on, looping endlessly in the digital ether, a haunting reminder that some legacies refuse to be forgotten, even as the screen fades to the Whispering Pines cryptid. Deep within the heart of Whispering Pines, a small, isolated town nestled on the fringes of civilization, there existed a forest. It wasn't just any forest, though. It was a place where secrets whispered through the rustling leaves, and ancient shadows lurked beneath the dense canopy. This forest was the epicenter of rumors, the breeding ground for legends, and a realm cloaked in fog and silence. Sarah, a curious journalist with a skeptical heart, had heard the unsettling whispers about the forest of Whispering Pines. There had been strange disappearances over the years, hushed voices speaking of eerie happenings that couldn't be explained. Determined to uncover the truth behind the tales, Sarah ventured into the heart of this cryptic wilderness. Her guide into this world of enigma was none other than Old Man Jenkins. He was a recluse, a hermit who had made Whispering Pines his home for longer than anyone could remember. Jenkins was known for his cryptic knowledge of the forest, and some believed he held the key to its mysteries. The day was overcast when Sarah and Jenkins set off into the woods. The fog hung heavy around them, obscuring their vision and muffling every sound except the creaking of branches overhead. Sarah could feel the oppressive atmosphere settle on her skin like a clammy shroud. She couldn't help but shiver as the first tendrils of unease crept into her mind. Jenkins led her deeper into the heart of the forest, where the trees grew gnarled and ancient, their roots clawing at the earth like skeletal hands. As they ventured further, the path seemed to twist and wind on itself, as if the very woods conspired to lead them astray. The day turned to night swiftly, and Sarah could hear unsettling noises echoing around them. The forest was coming alive with an eerie symphony of whispers and rustling leaves. Jenkins seemed unfazed, his gnarled face illuminated only by the flickering candle he carried. He motioned for Sarah to follow him deeper into the gloom. They came upon an ancient stone circle, the remnants of some long-forgotten ritual. Sarah's heart raced as she saw the occult symbols etched into the stones, glowing faintly in the candlelight. She tried to dismiss it as mere superstition, but doubt crept in like a creeping fog. It was then that they heard it, a sound that chilled Sarah to the bone, an otherworldly, mournful cry that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. Jenkins whispered, the cryptid, his voice tinged with awe and trepidation. The hunt for the elusive creature had begun. They pressed on, their senses heightened by fear and curiosity. The unsettling noises around them grew louder, as if the very forest conspired to drive them away. Sarah's breath quickened as she spotted a pair of glowing eyes in the underbrush, a fleeting glimpse of the cryptid, a creature neither fully of this world nor the next. Night descended upon them like a heavy curtain, and Sarah's unease grew with every step. They stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, its windows shattered, its door hanging askew. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay and mildew. Jenkins warned Sarah not to touch anything, but her eyes were drawn to the portraits lining the walls. As she gazed upon the faces in those paintings, she felt as if they were watching her. The eyes moved, following her every move with a malevolent curiosity. Her voice trembled as she whispered to Jenkins, "Do you see that? The eyes in the paintings, they're moving." Jenkins nodded solemnly, his candlelight flickering in the chilling draft that swept through the cabin. "They're trapped souls," he murmured. "The cryptid, it feeds on their torment." Suddenly, the cabin was filled with the haunting strains of a piano playing a mournful melody. Sarah's heart raced as she realized there was no pianist in sight. The music grew louder, more haunting, and she knew they had to leave. Back in the forest, they heard the cryptid's cries grow nearer, more desperate. Panic set in as they realized it was closing in on them, its spectral form shifting through the trees. The ancient trees seemed to close in around them, the very earth beneath their feet conspiring to keep them there. The cryptid was upon them, a creature of shadow and mist, its form ever elusive, its cry a soul-rending wail. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she faced the truth. It wasn't folklore, it wasn't just stories. It was real. In the climax of their encounter, Sarah and Jenkins confronted the cryptid, surrounded by the flickering candles, the haunting piano music, and the watchful eyes of trapped souls. It was a showdown that would forever blur the line between reality and the supernatural. In the end, the consequences of their curiosity would become painfully clear. Sarah had uncovered the horrifying truth of Whispering Pines cryptid, but at a terrible cost. Old Man Jenkins, who had known more than he ever let on, would forever remain a mystery, lost to the enigmatic forest he had called home. As Sarah made her way back to the town, she couldn't help but glance over her shoulder, her skepticism forever shattered by the haunting encounter in the Whispering Pines forest. She had ventured into the eerie heart of the unknown, and the unknown had changed her forever. Shadows in the cryptid's lair. The forgotten cemetery stood shrouded in a moonlit fog, its gravestones covered in moss, bearing witness to the passage of time and the secrets buried beneath the earth. Nestled deep within this graveyard of the forgotten was an ancient underground crypt, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred into obscurity. Illuminated only by flickering candles, it beckoned with the promise of long-buried horrors. Alex, a seasoned paranormal investigator and cryptid hunter, had spent years delving into the mysteries of the supernatural. His relentless pursuit of the unknown had led him to this desolate cemetery, to the very heart of the crypt where legends whispered of a menacing cryptid that haunted the depths. Accompanying him was Maria, a psychic with a shadowed past. Her abilities were both a blessing and a curse, a gift that had drawn her inexorably to the crypt's foreboding entrance. Her eyes bore the weight of the secrets she had glimpsed in the ethereal realm, and she had long since made peace with the darkness that clung to her. As they descended into the crypt's labyrinthine tunnels, the air grew colder, and a claustrophobic unease settled over them. The walls seemed to close in, and the flickering candles cast eerie, dancing shadows upon the ancient stone. "Are you certain we should be doing this?" Maria's voice trembled as she gazed into the inky darkness ahead. Alex's determination remained unwavering. "We must unveil the truth, Maria. Confronting our fears is the price we pay for delving into the supernatural." They pressed forward, their footsteps echoing through the crypt, a haunting reminder of their solitude. Alex's keen eyes spotted cryptid artifacts, strange symbols etched into the walls, cryptic markings that hinted at the cryptid's malevolent presence. As they ventured deeper, Maria's psychic senses began to stir. "There's something here, something ancient and powerful," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. They came upon a chamber at the heart of the crypt, a place where the air seemed to crackle with malevolence. In the center of the chamber lay a weathered stone altar, its surface marred by centuries of offerings to whatever lurked in the shadows. Maria, guided by an unseen force, approached the altar. Her fingers brushed the cold stone, and she closed her eyes, reaching out to the supernatural world. "There are restless spirits here, Alex. They seek answers, closure." Alex knew that they could not leave without confronting the cryptid, without unraveling the mysteries that bound it to this place. "We must hold a seance, Maria. Perhaps we can communicate with the spirits and unveil the truth." They lit a circle of candles around the altar, their flickering flames casting wavering shadows on the crypt's damp walls. Maria, with her psychic abilities, would act as the bridge between the living and the dead. As the seance began, a chilling wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing some of the candles. The darkness seemed to thicken, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. Maria's voice trembled as she chanted incantations that reached out to the spirits. The response was immediate. Whispers, like echoes from a distant past, filled the chamber. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, and the temperature dropped to bone-chilling levels. The restless spirits had awakened. Questions flowed from Alex's lips, each one met with cryptic responses from the other side. The spirits revealed tales of sorrow and betrayal, of lives lost and promises unfulfilled. It was clear that the cryptid was a guardian, bound by an ancient curse to protect the secrets hidden within the crypt. But the cryptid's rage was not limited to the living. It had ensnared the souls of the dead, trapping them in a never-ending cycle of torment. As Maria continued to commune with the spirits, it became evident that the malevolent entity would stop at nothing to protect its domain. Suddenly, the chamber erupted into chaos. Candles flickered wildly, and the shadows coalesced into a nightmarish form, a grotesque, spectral apparition with eyes that burned like twin orbs of fire. Maria gasped, her psychic link to the spirits severed by the cryptid's fury. "We have angered it," she cried out. With a deafening roar, the cryptid surged forward, its dark form closing in on them. Alex and Maria fled through the twisting tunnels, their footsteps echoing off the ancient stones. The cryptid pursued them relentlessly, its malevolence palpable in the frigid air. Desperation lent them speed as they raced through the labyrinth, their breaths ragged and panicked. The cryptid's inhuman wails reverberated behind them, and it seemed as though the very walls of the crypt conspired to keep them captive. Finally, they burst from the crypt into the moonlit cemetery, gasping for breath. The malevolent entity, bound by the crypt's threshold, could go no further. It screeched in frustration, its form dissipating into the night. As they stood among the twisted, gnarled trees and moss-covered gravestones, Maria and Alex shared a solemn glance. They had uncovered the cryptid's dark secrets, but at a great cost. The spirits of the restless dead had been released from their torment, but the cryptid remained, bound by its curse. Their journey into the supernatural had left them forever changed, a reminder that the price of confronting one's fears could be steep indeed. The crypt, now bathed in the soft glow of the moon, stood as a testament to the power of the supernatural world and the enduring resilience of those who dared to delve into its depths. The haunting howls of Cryptid Hollow. Cryptid Hollow, a secluded valley cloaked in perpetual mist, harbored an ominous reputation. Towering forests loomed over the landscape, casting an eerie, suffocating shadow. It was a place where legends whispered of unseen creatures and echoing howls that chilled the soul. James, a troubled paranormal enthusiast with a fascination for the unknown, had journeyed to Cryptid Hollow in search of answers. His restless spirit had driven him to explore the darkest corners of the supernatural, and this remote valley held the promise of untold mysteries. Emily, a local historian with a deep-seated family secret, had lived her entire life in the shadow of Cryptid Hollow. Her ancestors had woven a tapestry of legends around the valley, tales of malevolent cryptids that roamed the mist-shrouded woods. She knew that these legends held a kernel of truth, a truth she was determined to uncover. Together, James and Emily embarked on a journey to unveil the secrets of Cryptid Hollow. Armed with their curiosity and an arsenal of recording equipment, they ventured deep into the heart of the valley. The atmosphere was unsettling, thick with the constant presence of the unseen cryptid that lurked nearby. Their first clue came in the form of ancient diaries discovered in Emily's family archives. The worn pages contained cryptic accounts of bizarre occurrences, strange rituals, and eerie animal sacrifices. The diaries hinted at a connection between Emily's ancestors and the malevolent cryptid that haunted Cryptid Hollow. As James and Emily delved deeper into the valley's history, haunting cries echoed through the night. Unearthly howls, unlike any known animal, reverberated through the forest, causing the hairs on their necks to stand on end. These eerie sounds seemed to be a warning, a reminder of the perilous path they tread. One moonless night, while exploring a particularly dense thicket, they stumbled upon a series of grotesque animal sacrifices, an altar adorned with the remains of rabbits, birds, and other small creatures. The scent of death hung heavy in the air, and the cryptid's presence felt palpable. Emily's family secret began to unravel. She confessed to James that her ancestors had made a pact with the cryptid, a desperate attempt to gain power and control over their lives. In exchange for their dark sacrifices, the cryptid had granted them unnatural abilities, but at a terrible cost. Now, generations later, the cryptid demanded retribution. It hungered for more than the blood of innocent creatures. It thirsted for the souls of those bound to its curse. Emily's connection to the valley and her family's dark legacy made her a target. As the night wore on, the malevolent cryptid drew closer. It manifested as ghostly apparitions, shifting shadows that danced among the trees. The ancient woods themselves seemed to come alive, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. James and Emily knew they were running out of time. They had meddled with forces beyond their comprehension, and the consequences were closing in around them. With the cryptid's chilling howls growing louder, they raced through the valley, their footsteps echoing off the mist-draped trees. The chase was relentless. The unseen cryptid pursued them with a supernatural tenacity, its dark presence threatening to consume them whole. Emily's family's ancestral pact had bound her to this malevolent force, and she felt its pull like a siren's call. As they reached the valley's edge, their path led to an ancient stone circle, a place of immense power and significance. Emily knew that confronting the cryptid was their only chance at survival. With James by her side, they performed a desperate ritual, invoking the spirits of the valley in a bid to banish the malevolent entity. The air crackled with energy as the ritual reached its climax. Ghostly apparitions swirled around them, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble. The cryptid's howls crescendoed into a deafening roar, a final, desperate attempt to resist its banishment. In an explosive burst of otherworldly light, the malevolent cryptid was cast from Cryptid Hollow, its haunting presence vanquished. The valley fell silent, and the mist began to dissipate, revealing the moon and stars above. James and Emily knew that their journey had come to an end. but the weight of ancestral secrets and the consequences of meddling with dark forces would linger. Cryptid Hollow, once a place of shadows and horror, had been forever changed by their encounter. As they stood in the aftermath, James and Emily shared a solemn understanding. The price they had paid for their curiosity was steep, but they had confronted the malevolent cryptid and banished it from the valley. Their journey into the unknown had left an indelible mark, a testament to the power of the supernatural and the resilience of those who dared to seek the truth. Cryptid's Curse, the haunting of Ravenswood Manor. Ravenswood Manor, a looming Gothic mansion, stood as a dark sentinel on the outskirts of town. The imposing structure, with its ivy-covered walls and shadowed turrets, cast a foreboding presence over the cursed forest that surrounded it. For years, the manor had been cloaked in legend and mystery, a place whispered about in hushed tones. Olivia, an intrepid urban explorer, had long been drawn to the stories that swirled around Ravenswood Manor. Her fascination with the unknown and the supernatural led her to the mansion's eerie doorstep. But she was not alone in her pursuit of its secrets. Professor Samuel Blackwood, a reclusive expert in the occult, had spent decades studying the supernatural forces that clung to Ravenswood Manor. Together, they embarked on a journey into the heart of the mansion's dark history and its cryptid protector. The air around Ravenswood Manor was thick with a chilling atmosphere, its oppressive presence seeping into their bones. Their investigation began with a search for cryptic diaries hidden within the manor's cavernous archives. Dusty tomes lined the shelves, their pages filled with the secrets of the Ravenswood family, tales of madness, obsession, and the cryptid that had watched over the mansion for generations unfolded before them. Professor Blackwood, his fingers tracing the words of the diaries, revealed the story of a creature born of dark magic and bound to the manor. The cryptid, a spectral guardian, had been summoned centuries ago to protect the family from a curse of their own making. But the sins of the past had a way of haunting the present. As Olivia and the professor delved deeper into the mansion's secrets, spectral apparitions manifested in the dimly lit hallways. Ghostly figures, trapped between the realms of the living and the dead, whispered their mournful tales. One night, while exploring a room adorned with haunted portraits of the Ravenswood family, Olivia encountered a malevolent spirit. Its eyes bore into her soul, filled with anguish and rage. The apparition's chilling touch left her trembling and breathless. As the days turned into eerie nights, Olivia and Professor Blackwood could no longer deny the cryptid's presence. It watched them from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intelligence. They knew that their journey had brought them closer to a climactic confrontation with the guardian of Ravenswood Manor. The cryptid's tragic backstory began to unfold. It had been a creature of pure heart, bound to protect the Ravenswood family from themselves. But as the family's descent into darkness continued, the cryptid's purpose became twisted, its actions driven by malevolence. In the depths of the mansion, Olivia and Professor Blackwood unearthed an ancient tome, a ritual that could break the curse that bound the cryptid to the manor. The ritual was perilous, its success uncertain, but they knew it was their only chance to confront the guardian. As the moon cast an eerie glow over Ravenswood Manor, they gathered the necessary materials and began the ritual. Candles flickered in the darkness, and the mansion seemed to hold its breath. The air grew heavy with anticipation as they chanted incantations, calling upon the supernatural forces that bound the cryptid. Suddenly, the mansion shook with a ferocity that sent chandeliers swaying and paintings crashing to the floor. The cryptid, enraged and tormented, materialized before them. Its form, once ethereal and spectral, now took on a twisted and grotesque shape. With a deafening roar, the cryptid unleashed its fury. The very walls of Ravenswood Manor seemed to close in, trapping Olivia and Professor Blackwood in a nightmarish battle. The apparitions of the Ravenswood family joined the cryptid in a cacophony of rage. But they were not alone. The power of the ritual surged through Olivia and Professor Blackwood, their determination unwavering. They confronted the cryptid, their voices rising above the tumult, and began the incantation that would break the curse. As the words reached a crescendo, the cryptid's form wavered, its anguished cries echoed through the mansion, and its malevolent presence dissipated into the night. The curse that had bound it for centuries shattered, freeing the guardian from its torment. Ravenswood Manor, once a place of darkness and despair, now stood silent and empty. The malevolent spirits and the cryptid had vanished, leaving only the echoing whispers of their tragic tales. Olivia and Professor Blackwood knew that their journey had come to an end, but the mansion's dark history would endure. As they stepped out into the moonlit night, A sense of quietude settled over Ravenswood Manor. The Gothic mansion, no longer cloaked in mystery and malevolence, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The weight of its secrets had been lifted, and the enduring legacy of the supernatural had been confronted and quelled. Olivia and Professor Blackwood shared a somber nod, their journey into the unknown forever etched in their memories. The cryptid's curse had been broken, and Ravenswood Manor had been forever changed by their presence. The Cryptid Chronicles, Whispers from the Abyss. Dr. Michael Carter, a seasoned marine biologist with a relentless curiosity for the unknown, had long been haunted by the legends of an aquatic cryptid lurking in the depths of an underground cave system. The cave, hidden beneath the Earth's surface, was said to be the creature's lair, a place of unspeakable horrors. It was Clara, a local guide with a cryptid obsession, who had shared the legends with Dr. Carter. Her fascination with the creature's existence had led her to the dimly lit caverns and subterranean waterways that were rumored to house the cryptid. With Clara's guidance and Dr. Carter's scientific expertise, they embarked on a perilous journey into the heart of the cave system. The descent into the underground world was not for the faint of heart. Claustrophobic tunnels led to a labyrinthine network of caves, each more foreboding than the last. The air grew thick with a sense of lurking danger, and the walls of the cave seemed to close in, suffocating all who dared to venture further. As they navigated the dimly lit passages, Dr. Carter's equipment buzzed with anticipation. Bioluminescent creatures illuminated the darkness, casting an eerie, ethereal glow. But it was the eerie underwater sounds that sent shivers down their spines, a haunting symphony of unknown origin. Their deep-sea exploration took them further into the cryptid's lair, where the waters grew darker and more treacherous. The ceiling of the cave seemed to lower, forcing them to dive deeper into the abyss. It was there, in the heart of the underground labyrinth, that they encountered the cryptid's monstrous offspring. The creatures, grotesque and otherworldly, swarmed around them, their eyes gleaming with primal hunger. Dr. Carter and Clara were suddenly thrust into a harrowing underwater chase as they fought to escape the ravenous creatures. The cryptid's lair was alive with malevolence, and the water seemed to conspire against them, its depths concealing unspeakable terrors. Through a series of narrow passageways and harrowing encounters, Dr. Carter and Clara managed to elude the cryptid's offspring. But the relentless pursuit continued, the creatures never far behind. The underground world had become a living nightmare, and their every breath felt like a desperate plea for survival. As they pressed further into the abyss, Dr. Carter's scientific curiosity battled against the overwhelming sense of dread. He knew that their journey had brought them face to face with primal forces of nature, forces that cared nothing for human existence. The fragility of their lives had never been more apparent. The cryptid itself remained elusive, a shadowy presence that seemed to taunt them from the darkness. Its immense form remained just beyond their reach, a monstrous enigma that defied explanation. The cryptid's ancient and primal nature was a stark reminder of the insignificance of human existence in the face of such ancient and unknowable forces. With every passing moment, the underground labyrinth seemed to close in around them, its walls closing off escape routes and sealing their fate. Dr. Carter and Clara knew that they were teetering on the edge of a precipice, a point of no return from which there would be no escape. In a desperate bid for survival, they ventured deeper into the cave system, following the faintest glimmer of hope. The waters grew colder, and the darkness more oppressive. It was there, in the abyssal depths, that they finally encountered the cryptid, an immense, monstrous creature, its eyes filled with primal hunger. A harrowing confrontation ensued, a battle between human determination and the relentless power of nature. Dr. Carter and Clara fought with every ounce of their strength, but the cryptid's sheer size and ferocity made it a formidable adversary. As the battle raged on, the cave itself seemed to come alive, its walls shifting and closing in. The cryptid's roars echoed through the abyss, a primal call to all who dared to challenge it. Dr. Carter and Clara knew that their fate hung in the balance, their existence at the mercy of ancient and unknowable forces. In the end, it was a desperate act of survival that allowed them to escape the cryptid's grasp. They fled the underground labyrinth, their bodies battered and their minds scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The cryptid's lair had exacted a heavy toll, a reminder of the fragility of human existence in the face of nature's primal forces. As they emerged into the dimly lit caverns, the weight of their experience hung heavy in the air. Dr. Carter and Clara shared a solemn understanding, a newfound respect for the mysteries of the natural world and the enduring legacy of the cryptid's lair. The whispers from the abyss would linger in their memories, a testament to the relentless power of nature and the indomitable human spirit. The Cryptid's Web, a night of tangled fates. The abandoned amusement park, once a place of joy and laughter, now lay in decaying ruins. Its twisted attractions and eerie atmosphere had earned it a reputation as the hunting grounds of a nightmarish cryptid, a creature that stalked the park's desolate pathways under the cloak of darkness. Mark, a thrill-seeker with a penchant for the macabre, had heard the legends of the cryptid that haunted the park. Intrigued by the tales of terror, he couldn't resist the allure of the abandoned amusement park. And so, one moonless night, he found himself standing at the rusted gates, peering into the darkness beyond. Lily, a former park employee, harbored a dark secret tied to the malevolent cryptid. She had seen things that defied explanation during her time working at the park, things that had haunted her dreams ever since. Her connection to the cryptid was a burden she couldn't escape. As Mark ventured deeper into the park, a surreal and nightmarish atmosphere enveloped him. The once colorful attractions now stood as grotesque monuments to a bygone era. Sinister rides seemed to come to life, their creaking mechanisms echoing through the night. Mark felt as though he had stepped into a realm where dreams and nightmares were woven together in a twisted tapestry. Lily, knowing the dangers that lurked in the park, had followed Mark to protect him from the malevolent cryptid. Her knowledge of the park's dark secrets made her the reluctant guardian of its grim legacy. She couldn't allow Mark to meet the same fate as those who had ventured here before. As Mark explored the Eerie amusement park, he was drawn to the forlorn carousel standing in the center. Its once merry tunes now played in a haunting, discordant melody. Mark couldn't resist the eerie call of the carousel, and he climbed aboard one of the decrepit horses. The carousel began to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster, its flickering lights casting eerie shadows. Mark felt as though he were trapped in a never-ending nightmare, the world around him distorting and shifting. He tried to dismount, but it was too late. The carousel had him in its clutches. Lily, watching in horror, knew that the cryptid's influence had taken hold of Mark. She had seen it before, the way the park's attractions came to life with a malevolent purpose. She had to find a way to free him from the cryptid's web. Desperate, Lily searched for a way to stop the carousel's malevolent spin. She stumbled upon a hidden control room, filled with dusty, outdated machinery. As she frantically pulled levers and pushed buttons, the carousel slowed to a halt. Mark was released from its clutches, stumbling to the ground in disarray. He looked at Lily, his eyes filled with terror and confusion. It was then that she revealed her dark secret, her connection to the cryptid that haunted the park, a connection that had haunted her for years. Together, they ventured deeper into the abandoned amusement park, their footsteps echoing through the desolate pathways. Disturbing carnival games came to life in their presence, taunting them with their grotesque prizes. Sentient animatronics lurched forward, their mechanical movements distorted and sinister. The malevolent cryptid, aware of their presence, began to stalk them through the park's twisted attraction. Its presence was a constant shadow, lurking just out of sight. Mark and Lily knew that they were trapped in a nightmarish web, with the cryptid as the puppeteer. As they reached the heart of the amusement park, they found themselves standing before the haunted house, an attraction rumored to be the cryptid's lair. Its dilapidated facade loomed before them, a macabre invitation to enter its depths. With trepidation, they entered the haunted house, its dimly lit corridors filled with eerie laughter and unsettling whispers. As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, Mark and Lily felt the presence of the cryptid growing stronger, its malevolence palpable. In the final chamber of the haunted house, they confronted the cryptid, a nightmarish creature with twisted limbs and hollow eyes. It was a creature born of abandoned dreams and aspirations, a tragic embodiment of the park's dark legacy. A harrowing confrontation ensued, a battle between the malevolent cryptid and those who dared to challenge its reign of terror. Mark and Lily fought with every ounce of their strength, determined to break free from the cryptid's web. As the battle raged on, the very foundations of the haunted house seemed to tremble. The cryptid's power was waning, its influence over the park fading. Mark and Lily knew that they had a chance to escape the nightmarish realm and the cryptid's clutches. With one final, desperate push, they overcame the malevolent cryptid, banishing it from the abandoned amusement park forever. The park's twisted attractions fell silent, and the nightmarish web that had ensnared them was finally broken. Mark and Lily emerged from the decaying amusement park, their bodies battered and their minds scarred by the horrors they had witnessed. The cryptid's web had entangled them in a nightmarish tapestry, but they had managed to break free. As they walked away from the abandoned amusement park, they knew that they had faced the consequences of recklessness and the haunting nature of abandoned dreams. The park's legacy would linger in their memories, a testament to the enduring power of the supernatural and the indomitable human spirit. Echoes from the mine. Deep in the heart of the rugged mountains, there lay a long-abandoned mine that had long been shrouded in dark legends. It was said to be inhabited by a vengeful cryptid, a creature of nightmares that had driven miners to madness and despair. The mine's tunnels, now suffocating in silence, held secrets that had been buried for generations. Sarah, a geologist with a fascination for the unknown, had heard whispers of the cursed mine. She was drawn to its mysteries, determined to uncover the truth behind the cryptid's legend. Jack, a seasoned miner, had his own reasons for venturing into the mine. His family's dark history was entwined with the cryptid's curse, a legacy that he could no longer ignore. As they stood at the entrance of the forsaken mine, the oppressive and claustrophobic atmosphere weighed heavily upon them. The mine's dark maw beckoned them forward, its tunnels stretching deep into the heart of the mountain. They knew that there was no turning back now. Their fates were bound to the mine's relentless grip. Sarah and Jack descended into the depths, their footsteps echoing through the suffocating tunnels. The mine's walls seemed to close in on them, and the air grew heavy with the weight of the past. It wasn't long before they discovered the first clue, a set of unearthed mine records that spoke of strange occurrences and missing miners. As they delved deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, ominous echoes filled the air. It was as if the mine itself whispered tales of despair and suffering, the voices of long-departed miners echoing through the darkness. Sarah and Jack pressed on, driven by their determination to uncover the cryptid's secrets. The further they ventured, the more the mine seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. Phantom miners appeared in the dimly lit tunnels, their ghostly forms a haunting reminder of the mine's tragic history. They watched Sarah and Jack with hollow eyes, their spectral presence a warning of the cryptid's relentless pursuit. As they explored the mine's depths, the tunnels began to grow treacherous. Sections of the mine collapsed behind them, sealing their path and trapping them in the suffocating darkness. Panic gnawed at their resolve, but they knew that they had to keep moving forward, deeper into the heart of the mountain. With each step, the weight of the past bore down upon them, and they could feel the presence of the vengeful cryptid drawing near. It was a relentless, malevolent force driven by centuries of anger and suffering. Sarah and Jack knew that they had awakened something ancient and unforgiving. In the heart of the mine, they stumbled upon a chamber filled with cryptic symbols and strange artifacts. It was a place of unspeakable darkness, where the cryptid's curse had been born. As they examined the artifacts, they could feel the cryptid's presence closing in, its relentless pursuit growing ever more menacing. A harrowing chase ensued as Sarah and Jack raced through the labyrinthine tunnels, pursued by the malevolent cryptid. Its relentless pursuit seemed unstoppable, and they could hear its nightmarish cries echoing through the mine. The walls of the tunnels seemed to close in on them, and they knew that their time was running out. In a desperate bid to escape, they reached the deepest chamber of the mine, a place where the cryptid's curse was at its strongest. There, they confronted the vengeful creature, a nightmarish, otherworldly being with eyes that burned with hatred. The final confrontation was a battle of wills, a struggle to break free from the suffocating darkness of the past. Sarah and Jack fought with every ounce of their strength, determined to overcome the curse that had haunted their families for generations. As they faced the malevolent cryptid, they realized that the weight of ancestral curses and the inescapable darkness of the past could be defeated. With a final, desperate effort, they banished the creature back into the depths of the mine, sealing its curse once and for all. Emerging from the forsaken mine, Sarah and Jack were battered and scarred by their harrowing journey. They had confronted the darkness of the past and emerged victorious, breaking free from the suffocating grip of the cryptid's curse. The mine, once a place of nightmares, had been silenced, and its secrets buried once more. As they walked away from the cursed mine, Sarah and Jack knew that they had faced the weight of ancestral curses and emerged stronger for it. The darkness of the past would always be a part of them, but they had proven that even the most relentless of curses could be defeated by the indomitable human spirit. The Island of Lost Souls. Captain Daniel Reynolds had sailed the seas for decades, weathering storms and battling the untamed ocean. He was a seasoned sailor, a man who had seen the wonders and horrors of the maritime world. But there was one tale, One legend that had always eluded him, the story of the remote, fog-shrouded island where shipwrecked souls were said to be lured by a cryptid's haunting calls. Abigail, a survivor of a recent shipwreck, had been found clinging to driftwood by Captain Reynolds' crew. Her tale was a haunting one, a story of sirens and seductive melodies that had drawn her ship and crewmates to their doom on the distant island. She had a mysterious connection to the cryptid, one that she could neither explain nor escape. As Captain Reynolds and Abigail set foot on the desolate island, they were met with an otherworldly atmosphere. The fog clung to the landscape like a shroud, obscuring their vision and muffling all sounds except for the constant allure of the cryptid's call, a haunting melody that seemed to echo from the very depths of the island. Their mission was clear: to search for any survivors of Abigail's ill-fated ship. Shipwrecked artifacts littered the shoreline, a grim reminder of the island's treacherous reputation. But as they ventured further into the dense, fog-shrouded forest, they encountered something that sent shivers down their spines: ghostly apparitions of long-lost sailors, their hollow eyes filled with an eerie, longing sorrow. The apparitions whispered tales of the cryptid's seductive song, a melody that promised unimaginable treasures to those who dared to follow it. They spoke of phantom shipwrecks, their vessels lured to their doom by the irresistible lure of the unknown. Captain Reynolds knew that they had stumbled upon a place of profound danger, a place where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural were blurred. Despite the warnings and the eerie sea shanties carried by the wind, Captain Reynolds and Abigail pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the cryptid's call. Their footsteps echoed through the fog, the island's secrets seeming to draw them deeper into its mysterious heart. As night fell and the fog grew thicker, they stumbled upon a hidden cove where the remains of a dozen shipwrecks lay half buried in the sand. The sight was chilling, a testament to the cryptid's relentless lure. It was then that they heard it, the haunting siren song, a melody that seemed to beckon them with an irresistible, almost hypnotic power. Abigail, her eyes glazed with a distant longing, began to move toward the source of the song. Her connection to the cryptid was undeniable, and she could no longer resist its call. Captain Reynolds, his instincts as a sailor screaming danger, tried to stop her, but it was too late. She disappeared into the fog, following the seductive melody that promised untold riches. Captain Reynolds was left with no choice but to follow Abigail into the heart of the island, where the cryptid's song grew stronger with each step. The air was thick with anticipation, and the fog seemed to part before him, revealing a surreal, almost otherworldly landscape. As he ventured deeper, the island revealed its secrets, a cryptid unlike any he had ever imagined. It was a creature of immense beauty and danger, its voice a siren's call that transcended the boundaries of the natural world. Its eyes held a deep, ancient wisdom, and its presence seemed to envelop Captain Reynolds in a haunting, almost intoxicating embrace. The final confrontation was a battle of wills, a struggle against the irresistible lure of the unknown. Abigail, lost to the cryptid's call, stood at its side, her eyes filled with an eerie, almost otherworldly devotion. Captain Reynolds knew that he had to break the cryptid's hold, to free Abigail from its seductive grasp. With a final, desperate effort, he sang a counter-melody, a haunting sea shanty of his own. The two melodies clashed in a surreal, otherworldly symphony, each note a battle between the seductive call of the cryptid and the indomitable spirit of a seasoned sailor. As the melodies clashed, the cryptid's eyes filled with confusion and sorrow. It wavered, torn between its age-old instincts and the human spirit's resilience. Abigail, released from the cryptid's hold, stepped away, her eyes cleared of their distant longing. With a final, mournful cry, the cryptid disappeared into the fog, its seductive song silenced at last. The island, once a place of lost souls and haunting melodies, was still once more. Captain Reynolds and Abigail, survivors of the cryptid's call, emerged from the fog, forever changed by their encounter with the unknown. As they walked away from the remote, fog-shrouded island, they knew that they had faced the irresistible lure of the unknown and emerged stronger for it. The cryptid's haunting power had been broken, and the island's secrets would remain hidden, a mystery forever lost to the sea. Whispers in the City. Detective Emily Harris had seen her fair share of mysteries and horrors in the sprawling urban district she called home. She was a skeptic, a rationalist who believed in facts and evidence above all else. But when the rumors began to circulate about a cryptid lurking in the decaying alleys and abandoned buildings of the city, even her unwavering skepticism couldn't keep her away from the investigation. Emily's partner in this bizarre case was Alex, a conspiracy theorist with an encyclopedic knowledge of cryptids and the unexplained. He had spent years studying the shadows, the hidden forces that manipulated society from the shadows. It was an unlikely partnership, but Emily knew that Alex's knowledge might be the key to unraveling the mysteries of the city. The urban district was a bleak, decaying landscape, where dark alleyways and abandoned buildings seemed to hide secrets in every corner. The atmosphere was thick with the weight of urban decay, and the constant feeling of being watched hung in the air like a shroud. Their investigation led them to uncover hidden files and eerie surveillance footage that hinted at the cryptid's presence. They saw glimpses of a creature lurking in the shadows, its form shifting and elusive. The evidence was tantalizingly vague, but it was enough to keep them digging deeper into the city's dark secrets. As they delved further into the investigation, Emily began to question her own skepticism. The evidence, while circumstantial, painted a disturbing picture of a conspiracy tied to the cryptid's presence. It seemed that powerful forces were at play, manipulating the city's residents and hiding the truth behind a web of deception. The key events of their investigation unfolded in a suspenseful manner. They followed cryptic graffiti through the city's alleys, each symbol and message leading them closer to the heart of the mystery. With each step, the feeling of being watched grew stronger, and Emily couldn't shake the sense that they were closing in on something truly sinister. The themes of their investigation were as murky as the urban district itself. Reality and paranoia blurred together, and Emily found herself questioning the very nature of truth. It seemed that the hidden forces they were up against were capable of manipulating reality itself, distorting the lines between fact and fiction. The climax of their investigation came in a derelict building, its walls covered in cryptic symbols and graffiti. The air was heavy with anticipation as they ventured deeper into the building's decaying interior. Emily's heart raced, and she couldn't help but feel that they were walking into a trap. And then they saw it, the cryptid, lurking in the darkness, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intelligence. It was a creature of shadows, its form shifting and elusive, just as they had seen in the surveillance footage. Emily's skepticism wavered as she came face to face with the inexplicable. A suspenseful chase through the building's crumbling corridors followed. As Emily and Alex tried to escape the cryptid's grasp, the creature seemed to move effortlessly through the darkness, its presence an ever-present threat. The building itself seemed to shift and change around them, a nightmarish labyrinth that defied all logic. In the end, it was a narrow escape, as Emily and Alex emerged from the building, shaken but alive. The cryptid had disappeared back into the shadows, its secrets still hidden from the world. The city's mysteries remained, and Emily couldn't help but wonder if they had only scratched the surface of the hidden forces that lurked in the urban district. As they walked away from the decaying urban landscape, Emily knew that the investigation had changed her forever. Her skepticism had been challenged, and the blurring of reality and paranoia had left its mark. The city's dark secrets remained, waiting for someone else to uncover them, waiting for the whispers in the city to be heard once more. Voices from the forest. The ancient forest stood in silence, its dense canopy of towering trees shrouding the earth below in perpetual twilight. Rumors had long circulated that this forest was the domain of a vengeful cryptid, a creature whispered about in hushed tones among the locals. It was said that voices echoed among the trees, voices that were neither human nor animal. Rachel, a botanist with a passion for uncovering the mysteries of the natural world, had come to this secluded forest to conduct her research. She was drawn to the enigmatic whispers that had lured so many into the depths of these woods. Her companion on this journey was Ethan, a reclusive forest dweller who had spent his life among the ancient trees and possessed a wealth of cryptid lore. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew increasingly enigmatic and mystical. Rachel felt as though they were being watched by unseen forces, their every step observed by ancient guardians of the woods. Ethan, a man of few words, seemed at ease in this hauntingly beautiful but eerie place. Their investigation began with the discovery of mysterious forest markings, symbols etched into the bark of ancient trees. Rachel's expertise as a botanist allowed her to identify unique bioluminescent flora, plants that seemed to emit an otherworldly glow in the dim forest light. It was as if the very forest itself held secrets waiting to be revealed. But it was the whispered voices that truly captured their attention. As night fell, Rachel and Ethan huddled around a campfire, listening intently to the ethereal voices that seemed to emanate from the very trees. The voices were haunting, their words unintelligible, and yet they carried a weight of ancient knowledge that sent shivers down their spines. Ethan spoke of the cryptid, a creature he believed to be a guardian of the forest, a protector of the ancient woodlands. The cryptid's history was tied to the forest, a tragic tale of loss and isolation that had driven it to seek solace among the trees. Ethan's cryptid lore painted a complex picture of the creature, one that Rachel found both intriguing and unsettling. As they continued their exploration, the forest seemed to come alive with unseen entities. Sentient tree spirits watched their every move, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. Rachel marveled at the interconnectedness of nature and the supernatural, a web of secrets hidden within the heart of the ancient woods. But it was during a moonlit night that their encounter with the cryptid reached its climax. As Rachel and Ethan followed the whispered voices deeper into the forest, they came face to face with the creature itself. It was a towering figure, its form shifting and indistinct, as if it were made of the very shadows that danced among the trees. The confrontation with the cryptid was both mesmerizing and terrifying. It spoke to them in a language that transcended words, its thoughts and emotions conveyed through a strange and haunting resonance. Rachel felt a deep connection to the creature, as though it held the answers to the mysteries of the forest. But the encounter was not without danger, for the cryptid's history was one of sorrow and anger. It had been wronged by humans in the past, and its desire for retribution hung in the air like an unspoken threat. Ethan, who had always regarded the cryptid as a protector of the forest, now saw the depth of its pain and the darkness that lurked within. In the end, their encounter with the cryptid left them with more questions than answers. As they emerged from the ancient forest, they carried with them the weight of the enigmatic voices that still echoed in their minds. The connection between nature and the supernatural had been laid bare before them, and the secrets hidden within the ancient woodlands remained tantalizingly out of reach. As Rachel and Ethan walked away from the mystical forest, they knew that their journey had forever changed their understanding of the natural world. The voices from the forest would continue to whisper in their dreams, a reminder of the mysteries that lingered in the depths of the ancient woods, waiting to be uncovered by those bold enough to seek them.